Welcome back, I'm Dr. Ruckus, and today we're given a full standard set review for Aetherdrift. We're going to go over every single rare and mythic rare, as well as a select few commons and uncommons, and explain why or why not they might make it into a standard played deck, and if you should spend your wild cards on them. For me, it's coming out a bit early. I'm doing the early access event on February 5th, Wednesday, so if you want to see some epic gameplay against other content creators, you can see these cards in action early before deciding if you craft them. For you guys, I think it's coming to Arena on Tuesday, February 11th. Before we get into it, I want to give some background to our conversation, namely some questions you need to ask as we go through these cards to decide if they might make it into standard. The first thing you should always consider: does it die to removal in standard? The classic things being in black, there's Cut Down, which kills any creature with power and toughness 5 or less. Then we have all sorts of 2-drop interaction. There's Annoy with Affliction, there's Go for the Throat, there's Nowhere to Run, the Sheldress Edict. We should also cover, what's it called? Shoot the Sheriff, as that's going to be critical because Go for the Throat is the premier black removal spell in that it can kill any non-artifact creature, and we're about to get an artifact set with a lot of artifacts. So Go for the Throat is inherently going to get worse if any of those artifacts are good, which means Shoot the Sheriff is inherently going to get better, which means that random outlaw decks like Lizards might also get better. So we'll see how that goes, but generally you should be looking out for this kind of removal. And then in red, does it die to Burst Lightning for 2 damage, and does it die to Lightning Strike for 3 damage? And we'll also consider if it dies to Get Lost, which doesn't kill artifacts. It only destroys creatures, enchantments, or planeswalkers. That roughly covers the premium removal. You should always be asking yourself, if it dies to this, how is that going to impact its success in standard? The next thing you need to ask yourself always is, how does it deal with turn 1 hero into turn 2 Manifold Mouse? Sucks, but this is the state of standard. So if you're reviewing exciting red cards and you're trying to figure out what deck they would go into, if it does not improve upon this deck or beat this deck, it's going to be a little bit hard to play. Third thing is, how does it compare to the Unholy Annex, which do I not have in here yet? Unholy Annex is interesting in that it also fills both the 3-drop slot. No, I do have it somewhere. Why is it on my 3-drop slot? Oh, it's in the 5-drop slot. It fills both the 3-drop slot and the 5-drop slot. So if you're looking at 5 drops to play in black, you have to ask yourself, well, I already have this insanely powerful card built in that's a draw engine and also a 5-drop. Do I really need more 5-drops, or should I just keep my deck lower to the ground and more consistent with 2 drops to deal with mono red type stuff? The next question is affinity for artifacts. There are only a couple cards in the set that have that, but affinity is an incredibly powerful ability that discounts the cost of spells you have by the amount of artifacts you have on the battlefield. So there are certainly formats like Timeless and Historic where there are very serious affinity decks that are incredibly powerful. There aren't too many in this set, but that is something you should be looking out for. The next thing I want to call out is there is one specific deck in Standard today that is built around artifacts that is actually legitimately good. Like this deck will get you got, and that is any deck built around the, I do not know how to pronounce this word, Simulacrum Synthesizer. You can butcher me in the comments, I don't care. It's a 3-mana artifact. When it enters, you scry 2. Whenever another artifact you control with mana value 3 or greater enters, create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token. With this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. You can imagine, in a set with artifacts, if you have this down, every subsequent artifact with mana value 3 or greater is pumping out these massive creatures. This is huge. In terms of things in Standard today that are going to get benefited by this, there's a very good deck. There's Azorius, blue and white, and you can even splash red for Urbrass Forge and build a deck around this. We should be considering if any cards would already fit into this archetype, as this is probably the best artifact deck around in Standard today. The next thing is vehicles. I'm not very high on vehicles in general. I don't really like vehicles in my Magic the Gathering universe. Like, I don't really like vehicles that much. I like wizards and fairies and giants and stuff. But if we're looking at vehicles, the precedent we have for good vehicles in Standard are basically Bankbuster and Asika's Chariot. So Bankbuster is a 2-mana 4/4. You could then play a 3-drop, and then you could tap the 3-drop to power up the Bankbuster and block something with a 4/4 on turn 3. This was pretty good. This means even if your opponent had a removal for your 3-drop, you could still, in response, crew the Bankbuster and have a 4/4 to block. And it also came with this additional effect. We could pay 2 and tap it to draw cards every turn. This was a very powerful and one of the only vehicles I've ever seen played in Standard. The other one is Asika's Chariot. This was a 4-mana 4/4 that spat out enough tokens to crew it by itself, and then it had an additional ability on top of that, which put it over the top in terms of power level. So basically, we're looking for things. One, if it's a vehicle that spits out stuff that can crew it automatically, that's huge. And in addition to that, it also has to have a very good effect. Otherwise, you are punished for playing vehicles that you cannot crew because your opponent runs 20 removal spells and kills all your creatures. I'm not very high on vehicles, but that's like the precedent we're looking at as we evaluate cards. We should also look out for Zombie Tribal. I think it will be relatively pushed with this set. We should also look out for Dinosaurs. Dinosaurs were not very good in the big Dinosaur set release. I don't even remember what that was called. Ixalan something? I'm not even sure. There are a couple of good dinos coming out. You should be thinking about mono green dinos and Gruul dinos coming out. I put one in here, the Hammer Skull, but like there could be a good dino deck coming out here. There's also going to be some good reanimator stuff, especially with Portal to Phyrexia. This is one of the best artifacts we have around. So if we have a theme, a deck, you know, a set themed around artifacts and some reanimation shenanigans, like this is probably one of the best things you can be reanimating. It's 9 mana, so you're not going to cast that normally, but when it enters, your opponent sacks 3 creatures, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you get a creature every turn onto your battlefield. It's very good. We should be looking out for ways to use this as well. One of the last things to note is Abrade. It's not really premium removal today. We'll see if my giant head is blocking this thing. No, it's not. Normally, it's not that played because there's better stuff to do, but 3 damage to any target creature is decent, and the secondary ability to kill target artifacts is interesting. This could become premium removal if there actually are good artifacts lying around in Standard. Okay, that's the preface, that's the backdrop. Now we begin the onslaught that is reviewing each of the rare and mythics. Keep all of that in mind. The first one is Basri, Tomorrow's Champion. A 1-mana 2/1, it's a good stat line, legendary creature, human knight. You can pay a white and tap it to exert Basri and create a 1/1 white cat creature token with lifelink. This is very important. An exerted creature won't untap during your next untap step. Okay. And then secondly, for cycling, you can cycle it for 3 mana to discard it and draw a card. When you cycle this card, cats you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. I don't think this is really good enough to play. Like, you basically want to play this in a cat deck or maybe some kind of token deck. The fact that it doesn't untap during your next untap step does not excite me very much. So I'm not really super high on this card. There is a cat deck. It's actually not god-awful. It's okay. There's a Cat Lord, Erebo, that is actually quite decent. It allows you to pump out extra cat tokens whenever you play a non-token cat. Let's see if we can find this sucker. Cat Tribal. This card's good. Erebo the First Fang. Other cats you control get +1 whenever it or another non-token cat you control enters, create a 1/1 cat token. That can pump out a lot of cat tokens. But the problem is you have to play non-token cats. And this dude pops out a token cat. So I don't even know that it necessarily belongs in the cat deck. If Wizards had printed this as a cat knight, which they have done before, because we have a cat scout, which basically looks like a knight, this would have been perfect. We already have like kind of random 1-drops in this deck, which aren't good except that they're cats for Erebo. And if they had made this a cat knight, I think it'd be very playable and actually quite solid. But as it stands, I don't really know who wants this. Like, there's not really a human aggro deck in Standard, and exerting it and not having it untap the next untap step is a little bit painful too. If you could untap it and swing the next turn, I think that could be solid. But yeah, I don't really see this card getting a whole lot of play. Bulwark Ox. It's an interesting card to evaluate because it kind of reminds me of the Luminarch Aspirant in terms of what it does. It's a 2-mana 2/2 Ox mount. Whenever this creature attacks while saddled, you can put a +1 counter on target creature, so any creature, this one or something else. You can also sack this creature. Creatures you control with counters on them gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. It's only 1 to saddle. So Luminarch Aspirant was a kind of format defining card. Go back to my list of all this stuff. It was a 2-mana 1/1 human that at the beginning of combat every turn, you would put a +1 counter on any target creature. It was very hard to deal with, right? Base case is it's a 2-mana 2/2 that grows every single turn, or you could put counters on something else and make something else very hard to deal with. So here it is right here, Human Cleric. So this card is similar in spirit, except that you have to saddle. But saddling isn't that difficult for a true drop, right? In pretty much any aggro deck, you're going to want a 1-mana 1/1. This will be your 2-mana 2/2. And then turn 3, you're going to have a creature deploy. It'll either be a 3-mana 3/3 or another 2/2 or 1/1 or whatever. And it's only saddle 1. So it's very easy to saddle this. And ideally, you're deploying creatures every single turn for quite a long time. So it's not unreasonable that you'll be able to saddle this every single turn for quite a long time. So in that sense, it is just as good as Luminarch Aspirant for a while. And it also comes with this upside that you can sack it and have creatures you control with counters on them, gain hexproof and indestructible, which is a decent side effect to have on. If this is the one you're bulking up, you probably don't want to sack this one, but if you're distributing the counters elsewhere, it could be okay. So I don't think it's terrible. The problem is there's no home for it today. There's no mono white aggro deck besides mono white life gain, and I don't think this fits in better than any of the white 2-drops that whenever you gain a life, they get a +1 counter. Like, those things are already doing the thing in that deck. there's not really a home for it. There may be a Selesnya counters deck that comes out of this. There's a 1-mana 1/1 dog that gets counters that we'll see later, so there could be a deck there. But the issue is not in the power level, because I think it's roughly similar to Luminarch, Aspirant, and Spirit, is that there's really nothing out there that wants this, especially in the face of mono red, turn 1 hero, turn 2 manifold mouse. So we'll see. I don't really see it being played that much, which is weird because it sounds like a powerful card, but it needs a home. Third card here is the Guardian Sunmare. A 5-mana 5/5 horse mount with Ward 2. Whenever this creature attacks while saddled, search your library for a non-land permanent with mana value 3 or less, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. It has saddle 4. This is a weird card. 5 mana is very expensive for standard. If instead of a horse, it was a unicorn and it had lifelink, I'd be much higher on it. If you could drop a 5/5 that could potentially stabilize the board state, I'd be much more excited about it. In order to get its effect, I mean, you need to saddle it, right? And so you need either other creatures or a single creature with power 4 or greater to saddle it, which is quite a lot of effort. Searching your library for a non-land permanent with 3 value or less and slapping it onto the battlefield is pretty good. I just think it's very expensive and very slow, and I'm not really sure what deck in standard wants this right now. My guess is this won't be really heavily played. Like, it'd be cool in a control deck to be able to slap a temporary lockdown onto the battlefield and clean up everything early, especially since it doesn't have lifelink. But what control deck wants to have enough creatures around to saddle it in the first place? So I'm pretty low on this card. I think it needs lifelink to make it playable. Perilous Snare. 3-mana artifact with start your engines. This is a mechanic we're going to see a lot, so we'll explain it now. It says if you have no speed, it starts at 1. It increases once on each of your turns when an opponent loses life. Max speed is 4. So it's interesting because in order to take advantage of start your engines, your opponent has to be losing life on your own turn, which generally supports aggro strategies, right? You want to attack your opponent on your turn to deal damage. But some of these things don't look like they want to fit into aggro decks, so that's something you'll have to navigate. The only other thing to note is I believe there is a colorless land that will immediately start your engine. So you could play the colorless land and start your engine for free on turn 1 without having to cast anything, and then could go from there. So there are ways to start your engines faster than playing spells, but for the most part, it's going to take a little bit of time to accumulate. And if you're not in a dedicated deck that is dealing damage to your opponent or having them lose life on your own turn, I think it's going to be difficult to get up to max speed for. So anyway, it's a 3-mana rare artifact. When this creature enters, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until this artifact leaves the battlefield. Great, like standard removal, and it's basically an artifact version of enchantment removal we've seen a million times. So I think that's quite solid. Also would fit great into the Azorius deck I was talking about earlier, with the Smalcrum thing. This is the kind of card you want in that deck. Then it has max speed. If you have that, you can tap it to put a +1 counter on target creature or vehicle control. Activate only as a sorcery. So if you already want this effect in a deck like the one I described, it's okay. This does not wow me. I mean, the best thing about this is that it's an artifact instead of an enchantment, so it doesn't die to get lost. And then we find out if a Braid is main decked in a lot of decks to deal with artifacts. If it's not, then it's okay. But yeah, I'm not super high on this card. I don't think the upside outweighs the fact that it's 3-mana removal, which is generally pretty expensive for standard. Next, we have the Salvation Engine, a 5-mana 6/10 vehicle, so it does not start as a creature. Other artifact creatures you control get +2/+2, so it's a giant lord for artifact creatures. Whenever this vehicle attacks, return up to 1 target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's got Crew 6. It does not have haste. It does not have lifelink. It seems very slow to me for standard. You slam this on turn 5. You've got a bunch of random vehicles lining around. Hopefully you have stuff to crew them. If not, you're kind of screwed. You need to crew it now. So you crew it up for 6. You tap some stuff. You crew it up for 6. Your other artifact creatures get +2/+2. But what cards do you have to crew them with? Because you want to crew this thing. And then when it attacks, you do get up to 1 target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. All right, so you get another like vehicle type thing, and hopefully that vehicle spits out like a pilot, something like that. But I don't know. I'm just going to be so low on vehicle cards until someone proves me otherwise. Unless it spits out its own fodder, like the Asika's Chariot, it's just really hard for me to be high on this kind of card. I just don't see it. Skyseer's Chariot. It's a 2-mana 3/3. That's pretty great stats. It's got flying, although that's pretty good. It's a vehicle, so it's not a creature yet. As this vehicle enters, choose a non-land card name. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name cost 2 more to activate, and it's Crew 2. So I don't know of that many activated abilities in Standard beyond Planeswalkers, and the only Planeswalkers really played are going to be Liliana, Kaito, and what's that last one? Who else has played? There's the white one that's not really played. I feel like there's one more I'm forgetting about. But for the most part, oh, and Jace. Jace is played in blue. So you can name those non-land cards, and then their activated loyalty abilities will cost 2 more to activate, which is quite the pain in the ass for the opponents. So if it wasn't a creature, which is not to start, it's just a random artifact lying around. Like, you can read this as a 2-mana random artifact that shuts down Planeswalkers or annoys Planeswalkers. That's not going to be good in Standard. 1, because Planeswalkers really aren't played that much right now, and 2, like, it's a dead card against so many matchups, so it's probably not a good card on its own. If you can crew it, now we're into some weird aggro deck that wants a 2-mana 3/3 flyer, which is pretty strong, but also has this niche ability of shutting down activated abilities. Yeah, I don't think you really want this. I think if we have to use our creatures to crew something, we'd rather spend it to crew the Bulwark Ox and our aggro strategy and get extra counters every turn. I don't think shutting down Planeswalkers is that great. And then the question is, are there other activated abilities that are so good? Like, there's going to be Exhaust in this set, which is an activated ability. So if Exhaust abilities are really that good, maybe this could add some value. But my guess, from what I've seen, is I haven't been completely wowed by that many Exhaust abilities. So if Exhaust is a thing, that's huge, but Planeswalkers are not. So I don't know if this necessarily finds a home. And if it doesn't spit out a creature to crew it, like, I'm a little bit lower on it in general. Spectacular Pileup. 5-mana sorcery. All creatures and vehicles lose indestructible until end of turn, then destroy all creatures and vehicles. It also has cycling too. This is a solid Magic the Gathering card, mostly because cycling 2 is excellent on an expensive card, especially a niche expensive card, right? In the matchups where this is useless, you can just cycle it away for 2, and worst case scenario, it's a 5-mana sweeper. The question is, does it compete with Sunfall? Cycling 2 is pretty high up there in terms of value. Spitting out the token that can serve as a win con in your control deck that doesn't have many win cons is really quite good. So it's hard to price out Sunfall as a thing you might want to put in for like between 2 and 4 of your 5-drop slots for sweepers. But cycling 2 is good. I'm just thinking, like, against mono white control, you actually do want Sunfall, because even though it's control versus control, there is a lot of crud on the ground you want to sweep up. I guess, like, against, you know, Omniscience Reanimator, you could cycle it early to try to dig for a counterspell or something like that. It's okay. I think so far Sunfall is really quite useful even in the control mirrors, that it's often not a dead card. If there were more matchups with what I would call true control, where there are actually no creatures on the battlefield for the most part, and this was truly a dead card, I think the cycling 2 would be fantastic. But I'm not sure in today's Standard if that's true, and I think Sunfall is probably better here, even though I think this is a great card. Valor's Flagship. What is this? 4, 5, 6, 7. A 7-mana, 7/7 artifact vehicle, so it's not a creature yet. It has flying and first strike and lifelink. I like that. We're looking more like Atraxa here. It's got crew 3. It's got cycling for pay X, 2 and a white to discard this card and draw a card. When you cycle this card, create X 1/1 colorless pilot creature tokens. With this token, saddles mounts and crews vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. All right, so the thing you spit out with this thing can crew itself. That's important to know. In order to get this thing, you would have to cycle it for X equals 1. So if you pay 4 mana, you can cycle it to create a pilot and put this card in the graveyard. And then what you want to do next is turn 5, reanimate it, and then you already have the pilot to crew it. Though it won't have haste, because I can't think of many reanimator spells that give it haste. So you go through all this effort, and I guess the question is, why would you not just reanimate Atraxa instead, which is a 7-mana 7/7 that also draws you 7 with lifelink and flying? And the answer has to be that the reanimator package for artifacts as opposed to creatures is so advantageous that you're willing to give up all the benefits of Atraxa to just reanimate artifacts. I'm not aware that's the case. I mean, the premium 5-drop reanimator spell is Repair and Recharge. For 5 mana, you can return target artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker card from your graveyard to the battlefield and create a tapped Power Stone token. So that's like the card you want to play with. Again, in order for this to be that good, like, we have to be leaning into Portal of Phyrexia. Like, you can run 4 Portal of Phyrexias and 4 of this thing, and then you get to run Repair and Recharge. Is it in Jams too? I forgot. Artifact Enchantment, yeah. So you could run Omniscience too. Like, If you really want to lean into this and you needed another target and you couldn't get Atraxa because you're just leaning into reanimating enchantments and artifacts, you got Abuela's Awakening in there too, right? Then you could get this sucker. And then, yeah, you could like crew it and swing for lifelink. It's not god awful, only because you don't really run Portal to Phyrexia in the Omniscience decks these days. Because if you do that against mono red, they just top deck something hasty and kill you anyway. Like, it's really important to have the lifelink bit, and without that, Portal to Phyrexia is not enough on its own. So the fact this has lifelink and could give you a way to survive if you haven't binned your Omniscience yet in that Abuela's Awakening repair and recharge package isn't awful. They go to like, I mean, if they're tapped out, they can't kill your pilot on your turn, so they go to their turn. If they try to zap your pilot, you crew in response, and at least for that turn you have a first strike lifelink, but then your pilot's gone. Then you need something else to crew this thing, otherwise you can't block mono red the next turn. So I don't know, I'm still low on this card. I don't see it. Tell me I'm wrong. Voyager Glidecar. All right, this card could see play. It's a 1 mana 2/3 vehicle. It's got a good stat line. It's not a creature to start. When it enters, scry 1. I like that. We got an enter the battlefield effect, so immediate value. You can tap 3 other untapped creatures you control until end of turn. This creature becomes an artifact creature and gains flying. Put a +1/+1 counter on it. It also has crew 1, just 1. So the reason this card could be good, just in one particular instance, is that it could fit really well into the Jeskai Convoke deck, which really wants artifacts on turn 1 to sack to the what is it? Jeskai Convoke. To sack to the Gleeful Demolition. Like, Gleeful Demolition is by far and away the best card in this deck. You can destroy an artifact and then create 3 1/1 goblin creature tokens, and so most of our 1-drops really either need to be artifacts or spit out artifacts. So the best ones are the Siren, which spits out an artifact, and the Inspector, which spits out an artifact, and the Frontliner's okay. I usually don't run too many Wardens, because even though it's very powerful, and you'll see, like, pretty similar to the card we just reviewed, it itself is not an artifact, so it does not fuel the demolition, but having some in there is quite useful. So this is a card that could potentially replace Warden of the Inner Sky. You get the scry immediately, right? Whereas here you have to invest the 3 tapped creatures to get the scry. And you could potentially you could sack this new artifact straight to Gleeful Demolition, which would improve the consistency from that standpoint. The power of this one is that you can get multiple scries per turn, and when that pops, when you're against it and you think, you know, their weenie deck is like kind of all out of stuff and they got 20 lands and like whatever, they're out of gas, and they scry multiple times in the same turn, you start to get worried because you're like, they're gonna find something. So there is certainly power in that. But if I was gonna try this card, it definitely could be in that deck, because it's an artifact that you can already sack to Gleeful Demolition and hits pretty hard as 1 mana 2/3. Like, I think like it could definitely belong in there. It's very similar to the other card we just reviewed, so we'll see about that one. Mindspring Merfolk. I'm not a Boomer Magic player. Apparently Merfolk is a very beloved tribe. I've never seen it in Standard myself, and I'm not even aware. I'm sure there are Merfolk cards in Standard, but they must be terrible because I've never seen them played as far as I know. So I don't have high hopes for this card in Standard. It's a 1 mana 1/1 Merfolk Wizard with Exhaust. Exhaust means you can activate each exhaust ability can only be activated once. So it's a one and done type thing. You can pay X blue and a blue to tap it, draw X cards, put a +1/+1 counter on each Merfolk creature you control. So if there was a universe where there were good Merfolk in Standard and Heartfire Hero and Manifold Mouse did not exist, which is important, you could have some games where you go like turn 1 Mindspring Merfolk, turn 2 random Merfolk that grows, turn 3 a couple other random Merfolk, turn 4 you pay 2 blue and a blue, you tap this sucker, you draw 2 cards, you put a +1 counter on all the other Merfolk, they go crazy, you got some value out of it. Like, I could see all that being like a very reasonable Magic the Gathering style deck. But that just pales in comparison to turn 1 Heartfire Hero, turn 2 Manifold Mouse, double strike, trample every turn, kill you immediately. Like, we're not even in the same like stratosphere as that deck or something like that. So I just don't see this being good, and I don't really know what Merfolk are in Standard. I think it'd have to be pushed pretty hard with the set. So tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't see it. Mu Yanling, the Wind Rider, a 4 mana 2/4 human wizard pilot legendary creature. When this creature enters, create a 3/2 colorless vehicle artifact token with crew 1. All right, I'm listening, right? We have something that spits out a pilot. Like, this is the kind of thing we want. Vehicles you control have flying. That's cool. Whenever one or more creatures you control with flying deal combat damage to player, draw a card. All right, so the question is obvious. Is this better than Enduring Curiosity? Enduring Curiosity is already a heavily played card in Standard. It is a... what am I doing here? It is a 4-mana, 4/3 with flash that whenever you deal combat damage to a player with any of your cards, you draw a card. And when it dies, it comes back as an enchantment and sticks around. That's really good and very hard to compete with in the 4-drop slot. Flash is really good. When it dies, it comes back as an enchantment is really good. It's just all around an extremely solid card in the decks that want this. So in order to compete with that card, your vehicles have to be really good. Like the upside is you slam this on 4, it doesn't have haste, but both the... oh, I'm sorry, it spits out a vehicle. It spits out a vehicle. Yeah, not a pilot. Okay. 3/2 colorless vehicle artifact token with crew 1. Okay. So it can crew its own vehicle, but not that turn, because that artifact's not going to have haste. Okay, so you can slam Wind Rider on 4, and of your 3 vehicles lying around, if they don't have pilots, one of them can hopefully be crewed by the Wind Rider if it only needs crew 2. So that vehicle, along with any other vehicles you can crew, then can all get up into the air and have flying. If they kill the Wind Rider before you move to combat, then they lose their flying again, so then they're back on the ground. And then, the ones that hit with flying, draw a card. That's kind of a lot of work. When the cat just says any of your creatures get to draw you a card, and most of the cards in the cat deck already have flying. Although, to be fair, part of the reason they already have flying is that you have selected them to have flying so that they pair well with the cat. So, I don't know. We'd have to see some really good vehicles, and I haven't seen them yet. And even if there were good vehicles, you have to really value... I don't know. I feel like the cat does it better. I don't know. I don't see it. I think the cat would be better. Possession Engine. 5 mana, 5/5. Artifact vehicle, not a creature. When this vehicle enters, gain control of target creature an opponent controls for as long as you control this vehicle. That creature can't attack or block for as long as you control this vehicle. It's got crew 3. So it's a 5 mana, 5/5 that nullifies one of your opponent's creatures. And hopefully you can use that creature to crew this thing. So 5 mana is very expensive. If we were to compare it to another 5 mana card that is played, like I would probably compare it to the, what is that Bloomburrow card? Season of whatever that is. Season of the Burrow. So this is a 5 mana card. You can choose up to this many modes. So you can... If you choose the second mode for 2 of your paws, you can exile target non-land permanent. Its controller draws a card. So this is similar to you stealing their creature. And then you could also make 3 rabbit tokens or return something else. So this is an example of a 5 mana card that removes one of your opponent creatures and you get some other stuff lying around. It's very flexible. You can exile up to 2 non-land permanents, which is probably what you want to do very often, and still make a rabbit out of it. In terms of power level of 5 drops, first off, if they have no creatures, because they're controlled and this card's useless, right? You have nothing to do. Whereas Season of the Burrow, you could hit any non-land permanent, so that's very powerful. I mean, that alone makes this almost unplayable, right? Like, it's completely dead against opponents that don't have creatures. You can't even attack with the creature. You have to use it to crew this 5/5. It doesn't have an attack trigger. That would be nice. Yeah, I just don't see it. Repurposing Bay. 3 mana artifact, pay... So 3 to put it on the battlefield. Then subsequently another 2 in tap to sacrifice another artifact. Search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed artifact's mana value. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle, activate only as sorcery. All right, this is how it goes down. Turn 3, you plop this sucker on the battlefield. It does nothing. Turn 4, you pay 2 and tap it to sack your 2-drop artifact and now go get a 3-drop artifact. If you were not dead by mono red from this time, then I don't know what mono red's doing. Like, you should just play the 3 mana artifact that you want to be fetching anyway. Like, if there's some really good 3 mana artifact, I would just play that instead of playing this thing to spend 5 mana to sack your 2-drop artifact and then fetch it. It's just too slow for standard. This would only ever show up in standard if it's a 1 of, and somehow, like, you had artifacts lying around and you could facilitate a pretty strong, like, finishing game with this. If there's 1 of them in the deck, you can sack some stuff, get some other stuff, but it's too slow for standard. is my initial analysis of the card. Riverturn Monument. All right, I like this card. It's a 2-mana artifact at rare. You can pay 1 and tap it to have any number of target players each mill 2 cards. Okay, so we could mill ourselves, or we could mill both ourselves and our opponents, but likely just our opponents. Then it has Exhaust, so you can only do this once. You can pay 4 mana and tap it. Any number of target players each mill cards equal to the number of cards in their graveyard. I think this is going to be an awesome finisher in a lot of control decks. For anyone who wants to just dirtle along and then hopefully, you know, Jace someone out for the win. Jace is pretty expensive, right? You slam it for 4. If you completely minus them, I think it's, right, it's like 15 cards. And that's generally not enough to win. Generally, you need the second Jace, or you have to bounce it for 2 mana and replay it, and then you're up to 10 mana to do the whole sequence, or you're 8 mana to double Jace. So it's really quite a lot of effort. And you have to have the Jace like in the final hand. If you need the Jace early and you use it up, then you don't have the Jace later. This is 2 mana to deploy at any time, but even if it's just like turn 6, play this, pay 4, tap it. And if your opponent has 30 cards in their graveyard because it's halfway through the game or whatever, then you just mill them out for 30. We'll have to see if maybe it's not as good as I think. Like maybe of the 30 cards seen, I guess when your opponent is at 30, they could have like up to 7 in hand, and they could have like up to, you know, 3 more things on the battlefield. So maybe it's only 20 in graveyard. So maybe you mill them from 30 to 10. Maybe it's not quite as good as I think it is, but I think it could be better than Jace. I don't know. Now I'm kind of talking myself out of it. I think I'm high on this card. I think it could be okay. I guess it kind of depends how much stuff is in the graveyard midway through a game. Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. I think it could be good. I'm gonna try it out. We'll see if I'm totally wrong, and like maybe there aren't, like if you can get your opponent to have 30 cards in the graveyard, then you mill them the rest of the way, obviously. But maybe that's not as likely as I think. I mean, because if you get to 15 cards, you might as well just run Jace anyway. I was excited about this card. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll have to see how this one plays out. I could be wrong. Thopter Fabricator, a 3-mana 4/4 vehicle. It is not a creature. It has flying. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. It also has crew 2. So there's a similar card today that does not see play that is pretty hard to build around. Yeah, I did a single video on it at some point. What is that thing called? It's the homunculus. The homunculus horde. Homunculus? Homun? There we go. Homunculus horde. So this card is a 4-mana 2/2. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a token that's a copy of this creature. So first off, drawing your second card each turn is not as easy as it sounds. On your turn, it's not that bad, because you get 1 for free. Then you just have to draw a second card. That's not so bad. You can just do that. On your opponent's turn, you have to draw 2 cards. So you have to draw a card and then draw a card again to draw a second card on your opponent's turn. That's actually quite difficult to do. The payoff for this is you create a token copy of it, and then next turn you make 2 copies, and then 4 copies, and then 8 copies, or whatever. So like there is a win con associated with this if you can keep it onto the battlefield. It's pretty hard to do in standard. Like that deck was fine that I built. It was not like amazingly successful, and the Homunculus Horde didn't make it any better. It was basically a deck I did to say, hey, look at this cool new rare that was printed. Let me make a deck for you guys to show off how you could build it. It's basically just a worse version of mono white tokens though. Like, it's just hard to pull off. And then Sunfall just ends immediately. Like, you might as well just put like more draw engines or more removal in here. I had to run 3 steps ahead to have a way to draw cards on my opponent's turn. So that's like one way you can draw 2 cards on your opponent's turn, but it's kind of a difficult feat to do. So with that backdrop, this thing is a vehicle. So it does sit underneath sweepers, which is, I think, perhaps a pro, and underneath creature removal. Like the hard thing with Homunculus is the opponent just kills it immediately, and you're like, all right, screw you. I can't do my fun combo for my YouTube video. I guess I'll just sit here in sadness. But this is a vehicle, so it does sit underneath. And it's only 3 mana, so it's a little bit cheaper. And so if you can draw 2 cards a turn, you spit out Colorless Thopter artifacts, and artifacts actually do fuel that deck, right? They do fuel the Enduring Innocence, and they do fuel the Caretaker's Talent. So I guess already this is actually a lot better than the Homunculus Horde. I like a lot that it's an artifact. The fact that it does not die to Sunfall, even if all the Thopters die to Sunfall, and it doesn't die to Get Lost and Cut Down and, you know, all that stuff, actually is maybe better than I thought. Okay, so what other cards pump out tokens this freely? Like, you are... Carrot Cake? Maybe this card's really good. So in order to draw the second card on your turn, you know, like you copy the talent, you make a second card, you get the talent trigger. This card could be okay. Yeah, I'll try it out. We'll try it out instead of the Horde. And basically in this exact shell, it could be okay. I was comparing it to the Horde, but the fact that it's, for once, I think the fact that it's an artifact and not a creature actually could be pretty good. And then eventually, you know, for the final blow, you can tap 2 of the Thopters and get your full 4 in there for like a little bit last bit of damage. I don't think you need that. Like, I think the Caretaker's talent final level up is ultimately what'll win. Plus, these things have flying. All right, I'm excited for this card. I thought this card was terrible upon first review, but now that I'm looking at it now, I'm actually kind of excited to try it out. I think it could be okay in like the mono white tokens deck, and you have a bunch of flyers that can, you know, turn into 3/3s or whatever with the Caretaker's talent and then swing for lethal. I'm kind of into that. We'll see how this card goes. Unstoppable Plan, a 3-mana enchantment at the beginning of your end step. Untap all non-land permanents you control. The first time I read it, I thought it said all permanents you control. So all non-land permanents. So I mean, you want a bunch of mana rocks or mana dorks around. So you go like turn 1, Llanowar Elves. Turn 2, some other elf. I don't even know if there are any mana rocks in standard right now. Then you, turn 3, you slam this down. And then you untap your 2 other things. And then you could hold open a 2-mana counterspell or something. Beginning of your end step. I mean, you want something to flash in. Like if you play the Whale, the 6-mana Whale, you could tap out on your turn and then flash in a 6-mana Whale on your opponent's turn if you had enough non-land permanents. That's a lot to ask. I don't know who wants this. I feel like in theory it could be very good. Maybe there is some like very strong combo. But basically you want a lot of mana dorks, I think. Maybe there's probably an infinite combo you can do with this. I don't know what it is. I don't think it'll be like main deckable in standard, but maybe there's someone who could break this thing. I'm not sure. Vinwixt, the verbose host. I need a water break. I'm getting tired talking this much. This is a weird card. It's a 2-mana, 0/4 homunculus legendary creature. It has Start Your Engines, but it itself does not do any damage because it is a 0/4. So you want to deal damage or have your opponent lose life on your turn so you can ramp up your speed. But this itself does not facilitate that. You have no max hand size, but if you get to max speed, if you would draw a card, draw 2 cards instead. So that's pretty busted. Like 2 cards per turn is very strong. It comes on a creature body. It does not facilitate the strategy. It looks like it wants to be in like a card draw or, you know, control shell. Like where this wants to be, this is a weird card, right? This is, who wants this? Like, I guess the deck that wants this most would be like a Start Your Engines Dimir Fairies deck. So you're dealing damage, you're drawing cards, you know, you're picking away at the opponent. Maybe you have the land that starts the engines on turn 1, and so your little fairies and pixies can get a 1. And then you got like 1 copy in this late game. Maybe you draw it and you slam it. And then if it sticks around, then you're drawing 2 cards per turn. If you hit with the Enduring Curiosity that same turn, then you're drawing 2 cards per draw off the Curiosity. That seems like overkill at that point. I don't know. It's a creature body. It dies to cut down. That's one of the reasons you have to think about cut down in like my pre-chat. It's a 0/4 that dies to cut down. Doesn't die to lightning strike or burst lightning. Does die to everything else. It's a creature. It's a creature. It just dies to everything. I don't know, man. It's a 0/4 creature. I don't know who wants this. Waxen, Shape Thief. 4-mana Shapeshifter. So it could be any type, which is interesting. We'll have to... Oh, that's not true. That's not true. That's just a name, right? No, it has to have a special text line for that, I think. It's got Flash. You may have this creature enter as a copy of an artifact or creature you control. It's also got Cycling 2. So I would say nobody wants this, but there was a time in Alchemy, actually, at the beginning, at the dawn of Alchemy, before everyone stopped playing it, where there was Glasspool Mimic, which is a 3-mana creature that you can either play it as a land, which is interesting because it's kind of similar to this, like, you could cycle this new card, or for 3, you could play it and have it enter the battlefield as a copy of another creature. And so what you do is you would, I guess, play it as a land as you needed, or you could go get the Inquisitor Captain and copy that with the Glasspool Mimic. And the Inquisitor Captain was so good that it was worth copying. And I think even off the Inquisitor Captain, you could go fetch more of the, whatever this thing is called, the Glasspool Mimic, and then copy that a bunch. So there is a world where this card could be good in Standard or Alchemy-esque situations, because I've seen it before. but nothing comes to mind of like a 2 or even 4 drop that's so good that you want to copy it. Like this card was busted. You seek 2 creature cards with 3 or less and put one of them onto the battlefield and the other to your hand. Like that was a very powerful effect. So there's a world in which this could be good, as it reminds me of that card, and it has, you know, the backdrop. You can always just cycle it away for 2, but I can't think of a creature we want to copy in standard that badly that's worth building a deck around. So it's pass for me. All right, we're on to black. Bloodghast. All right, this is a card I'm excited about. We're gonna see how this goes. It's black and a black, so it really just fits into mono black. It's a vampire spirit, which is interesting. I wish it was a zombie, especially since zombie is theoretically pushed in this set. I would have loved to have seen a zombie, but it's a vampire instead. It cannot block. Not that we're blocking against mono red anyway, but if we wanted to, we can't. This creature has haste as long as an opponent has 10 life or less. Okay. Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, you may return this card from the graveyard to the battlefield. This is going to be an annoying threat. Obviously, it is gone forever off of Sunfall and temporary lockdown. But anything else, Burst Lightning, Lightning Strike, most of the mono black removal, except for Anoint with Affliction, and a lot of even mono white removal like Get Lost, it'll kill it. And if they got 10 life or less, you play a land, this sucker comes back. Maybe you got 4 of them. Maybe you play a land and 4 of these suckers come back and all attack for haste. Like that is really a lot of pressure out of nowhere. The question is it better than anything else already being done in mono black? Like most of the true drop slots are taken by very efficient removal, creature removal, and so really it's just the Bloodthirster Bat. Bloodthirster Bat comes down on 2, looks at your opponent's hand, takes their best card away, or maybe just has to take their removal spell because the removal spell is the thing they want to use in the bat anyway. Fills an important niche, and in the mirror it's very good because you can take your opponent's annexes or their duresses before they can deal with your annex type thing, assuming they don't have removal off the bat. It's okay. I mean, it slows the opponent down a little bit. Oftentimes, I have multiple removal spells. They pick one. I use the second one to kill the bat, get back the first removal spell, and then proceed from there. So it's not the end of the world. But this card's definitely interesting. I kind of like it. It could be incredibly powerful. Like, I'm just trying to think. If you put in 4 copies of this instead of the bat, I mean, your opponent doesn't want to waste removal on it. I guess the thing is, it doesn't put on that much pressure, right? It's just a 2/1. If they don't answer, it just chips away at 2. And you do have to get them under 10 life to get the haste, but the land falls anytime. Whenever a land you control enters, and we return this card from the graveyard to the battlefield. It deals with Liliana really well in the mirror. Your opponent goes Liliana sack, you go land, play it back. You just have the creature back again. If you needed a sack outlet for anything, like ignoring mono black, if you need any kind of sack outlet, this is fantastic. Sack the creature, play a land, get it back for free. I think it's a very good card. This is the kind of card that looks fantastic and then is just never played. But man, I gotta think you want at least one of these in that mono black deck, even if it's just a one of. And yeah, it gets milled, or you play it out once and it comes back every turn for the rest of the game. Threatens planeswalkers with haste. Man, I gotta think it's okay. I gotta think this is a good card, but we'll see. I don't know if it's gonna make the mono black deck any better. Cryptcaller Chariot, a 4-mana 5/5 vehicle. It is not a creature. It has menace. Whenever you discard one or more cards, create that many tapped 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. This is very cool. It's tough to say where this fits in standard. So discard effects in standard. If you're a Reanimator deck, you have discard effects. If you play Liliana, you have discard effects. I think cycling is part of the set, which is why this card exists. That is a discard effect, but there aren't currently many, if any, cycling cards in standard that are played. So it's got to be from new stuff from the set, basically from the cycle component. But if you go turn 3 Liliana, kill the creature, whatever. Turn 4, you drop the Chariot, you +1. Both you and your opponent discard a card. Then when you discard a card, you create that many tapped zombie tokens. You make just one single tap 2/2 black zombie creature tokens, but you do that every turn with Liliana for a while, and that will add up. The bigger question is, can you like discard your entire hand with Tunnel Grinder, right? You play that, you discard like 6, and then you get like 6 tap 2/2s, then you're really doing it. The thing is, you took turn 3 off to Tunnel Grind, and then you're telling me you get to take turn 4 off as well to play a vehicle that can't attack. it feels a lot like dies to mono red immediately. Like if you're going to tunnel grind on 3 to take the turn off, you better be Abuelo's Awakening or Reanimating on 4 to like get your butt in gear. Otherwise, you're kind of screwed. Yeah, I think it's a very cool card. I mean, the other thing is like, can you crew it on 2? So that means you'd have to have a deck that has creatures that you want to play on 1 or 2 with your discard. So that's possible. You could run the red Delirium card. I forget what that card's called. I don't know what it's called. Delirium. Is that how you spell that? Nope, that's not how you spell that. Oh, what is going on here? Am I filtering weird? No, I got it. I just spelled Delirium wrong. Delirium? Delirium? There we go. Fear of missing out. So this is a 2-drop creature that has 2 power, that also has a discard effect built into it, and could potentially crew this thing if you needed it to like block or something. And then the question is kind of like, is that thing really alive by turn 4 by the time you do this thing? So yeah, I think it's a cool card. Somehow you have to not die. I think it could be okay with Leon. It just doesn't impact the battlefield. I think it's, man, if you're just like discarding 1 card per turn to make a 2/2 zombie, it doesn't feel like you're doing enough. Obviously the zombies itself can crew this thing too. To make the first zombie, it comes in tapped. You can't attack with that, which is too bad. The next turn you can start attacking with this thing. It's really grindy, but it does not impact the battlefield alone when it comes down. And that's kind of like the thing in standard. If it doesn't impact the battlefield immediately, it's got to be really good. And I think for this card to be really good, you have to discard your entire hand to make like 7 2/2s. And if you're doing that, then you're not doing anything else for turns 3 and 4, and then you're just dead. So I think for that reason, it's a no. But it's a very cool card. And I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Now we have the Curse Cloth Wrappings, a 4-mana artifact. Zombies you control get +1/+1. Another zombie lord. We've got like infinite zombie lords in standard right now. I think there are like 4 or 5 zombie lords in standard right now after the set release. You can tap this artifact. Target creature card in your graveyard gains Embalm until end of turn. The Embalm cost is equal to its mana cost. Exile that card, pay its Embalm cost. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a white zombie in addition to its other types and has no mana cost. Embalm only is sorcery. Alright, so you can bring back 1 thing for its mana cost every turn. Plus, it's a lord. And it's an artifact, which is in theory hard to deal with unless everyone main decks artifact removal. This card is pretty good. Especially if there are zombies with Death Touch. I don't know if there are zombies with Death Touch. Like, that's the kind of thing that could blunt mono red. Like, Double Strike doesn't really help with that. I think this card's pretty good. Turn 4 Lord, pump up your 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop zombies. If they pick them off, immediately that same turn, you can tap this thing and immediately bring back a zombie. If it had haste, that'd be incredible. I think there's only 1 haste zombie. There's a Rakdos haste zombie that's okay. I think this card's good. I think there will be a zombie deck that is played in standard. It probably won't be quite as good as mono red mice, but I think it could be very playable, and we'll have to see how this goes. But I think this card is good. Demonic Junker. All right, this is our first Affinity for Artifacts card. We got to watch out for this kind of stuff. 7 mana, 6 and a black for an artifact vehicle that is not a creature. It's a 4/3. It has Affinity for Artifacts, which means it costs 1 colorless less to cast for each artifact you control. When it enters, for each player, destroy up to 1 target creature that player controls, including your own creature, by the way. I don't think you'd ever really want to do that, but it is an option. If a creature you control... Oh, it's destroyed this way. Put 2 +1 counters on this vehicle. Okay, so, and it has crew 2, which is pretty cheap. All right, so the thing about this, it's infinity. Sorry, affinity. So the earliest you can play this, turn 1, artifact. Turn 2, artifact. Turn 3, artifact. That means the thing costs 3 less to cast. On turn 4, you have 4 lands. Instead of causing 7, this costs 4, so you can play it on turn 4 and pick off your opponent's creature. Fine. It is similar to Leyline Binding. Like, it's not that hard to Leyline Binding. You got like a couple Surveil lands in there. You can get Leyline Binding down to 4. It's pretty expensive removal for 4 mana, but to kill anything's pretty good. But you get Leyline Binding down to 1 mana, and you're like, oof, this is good. This is very powerful. 1 mana, remove anything is very good. So like turn 4, this is okay. But like turn 8, late game, this is extremely powerful. 1 mana removal. This is the kind of thing that could absolutely go in the, whatever this thing is, the Simulacrum deck that I can't pronounce. Simulacrum Synthesizer kind of deck. I believe its mana value is greater than 3, even with the affinity. Some rules lawyer double check me in the comments. Like, I think it will still count as a 7 mana card, although if I'm wrong, please let me know. It could be incredibly cheap removal late game, and then also pump out an artifact creature as well. Like, it could be very, very good in this deck. Yeah, I think you could definitely build an Esper deck going Synthesizer on 3 into removal spell on 4, and then late game you play it as a 1-mana removal spell, kill any creature. I think it could be quite good. So we'll watch out for affinity. This is the first affinity card we've seen. Gas Guzzler, a 1-mana 2/1 vampire rogue. It's got start your engines. That's good, because if you don't have the land that starts your engines, like, you really want 1-drops to start your engines, because if you're starting your engine on turn 4, like, it's too late. The game's already over. Start your engine on turn 1. This creature enters tapped. Pretty vampire skeleton-y thing to do. For a 2/1 at max speed, you can pay a black, sack another creature or vehicle, draw a card. So this is, I mean, it's either an aggro card or a sack deck card, right? So if it's an aggro card, realistically, there is not or should not be that much space in your curve to pay a black and sack something, right? Ideally, you go 1-mana 2/1, hit him hard. 2-mana, 2/2, whatever, hit him hard. 3-mana 3, whatever, hit him hard. Like, you really shouldn't have space in your curve to be like, aha, you used your removal spell. I magically have an extra mana floating around. Let me sack it and draw a card. Like, if that is how it's turning out, you have not done a good job of hitting your curve and putting on pressure to your opponent. Late game, it's okay, right? Late game, it's like the last card you draw, and then you can start sacking stuff and drawing for stuff. Like, you will have more mana. There will be more gaps in your curve later in the game, but early in the game, like, you shouldn't be doing this. Unless you're in a dedicated sack deck that wants a 1-mana sack outlet. We'll get to these cards later. There is a 0-mana sack outlet later, which we'll get to, which is much better than 1. It's just realistically going to be hard to fit this into your curve, even if it looks cool on paper to be like, oh, you used your removal spell, I sack this, and then I get the extra value. In terms of, like, I'm thinking about the Rakdos sack deck. Like, you can sack, it could be okay in that deck, actually. And that deck really needed better 1-drops too. Here, I'm going to pause real quick to go to the bathroom, and then we'll come back. And we're back. So this is the Jund/Rakdos sack deck, and it really struggles for good 1-drops. The Hexmage isn't bad because it comes in with an enchantment, and then you can sack the enchantment to the Disturbing Mirth or the Final Vengeance, so that has a value there. But boy, I mean, for mid-range deck, like, there are some games where you'll line up, and the problem is you need enough removal to kill mono red. But boy, is that removal just dead in your hand against control. Like, there'll be some games where you have like 4 Vengeance, 4 No Order Runs, and 4 Deadly Brews in your hand against control, and you're just like, yeah, I just sit here and do nothing, and my 1-mana 1/1s just don't do anything against control, not even a little bit. And so maybe having the ability to sack something for 1 and draw a card could at least get you closer to the Forge, which is really your only win con against aggro. So maybe you could play that instead of the Hexmage. But overall, it turns out that actually 1 mana, as crazy as it sounds, is really quite expensive to fit into any curve at most of the game, to sack something and draw a card. So, yeah, we'll see. Gonti, the Night Minister, a 4-mana 3/4 legendary creature Aetherborn rogue. Yeah, I like the artwork too, I guess. Whenever a player casts a spell they don't own, that player creates a treasure token. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller looks at the top card of that opponent's library and exiles it face down. They may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. Mana of any type can be spent to cast a spell this way. All right, this is a super interesting card. This is Enduring Curiosity Part 2, but instead of drawing cards off of our own library, we exile cards off of our opponent's library. When we cast them, we get treasure tokens to keep casting more stuff. That's really freaking cool. It's the treasure token thing that makes this interesting. So you got your weenie, 1-mana 1/1 Pirate Siren Flyer. You got your 2-mana weenie 2/1 Fairy Mastermind Flyer. You got your 3-mana, I don't know, Kaito, whatever. You're getting in there, you're plucking in there for damage. And then instead of getting draws off of the Mastermind, you exile cards off your opponent's library. You have to cast them yourself the first time. You can use mana of any color, but you got to cast them yourself. And then when you cast a spell that you don't own, or whenever any player does, then you get a treasure token. So I think it's very cool. I mean, the issue is the cat is so good at what it does, because even if it dies, you still get the effect. Like, you flash in the cat and they go for the throat of the cat and you still get the draws, which is such a pain in the ass. And it's 4 mana value. So Anoint with Affliction doesn't even exile it because it has to be 3 mana value or less. So it's so good at what it does. But this is such a cool effect. I will absolutely try it out. if we're being real, it's probably just not as good as the cat, because when the cat dies, you still get the draw power, which is insane. And this thing could just go for the third immediately, and then that's it. But boy, the ability, and also like, generally speaking, playing your opponent's cards is going to be less good than playing your own, right? Like you could hit a control opponent and hit 4 Sunfalls and be like, all right, well, I obviously don't want to play Sunfall into my board state. It's very cool. I guess the reality is, no, it's probably not better than Enduring Curiosity. But you will have a lot of fun playing this card. If you get any connects, like, you'll have a lot of fun. And nobody likes it when you play. Nobody likes when someone else takes cards from their library and plays them. It's like the ultimate slap in the face. And on the reverse side, it's very fun to play your opponent's deck. So yeah, there's lots of fun to be had here. But I think the deck it wants to go in is the Dimir kind of fairies deck, and I think the cat just does it better for being realistic. Very cool card. I like it a lot. The Last Ride, a 1-mana 13/13 vehicle. It's not a creature. The Last Ride gets -X/-X, where X is your life total. You can also pay 3 mana and pay 2 life to draw a card. Adds in speed, you can do that as many times as you want. And it also has crew 2. So it's an interesting card. -X/-X, where X is your life total. I guess we have some pain lands to get your life total low. We don't have shock or bolt lands in standard. Yeah. Honestly, where I see this going is in a weird Mardu sack deck with Callous Sellsword. So it's an artifact. It's a non-creature. So you can get your prowess triggers. You could throw like 1 or 2 of these in that deck, although it's already pretty cramped. Like you could go Monastery Swiftspear on 1, Slick Shot on 2. You play this out, like you'll get your prowess triggers. And then I guess when you're ready, you would have to not attack with another creature. You'd have to crew it. Your life total has to be low too, though. Like you have to be in the mirror. That's kind of the problem, right? Yeah, that probably makes it unplayable, I guess. Like if you're in the mirror, I think it could be pretty sexy. Like you could if you're hitting them, they're hitting you. Nobody's blocking, because why bother blocking? Mono red, you get low. And then when you attack with this thing, you hit him for like 8 or something, and then fling it for the other 8. The other way to get your life low is to pay 3, and 2 life every turn to draw a card, but that's pretty expensive in an aggro deck. You could play it in a control deck as a 3-mana draw engine. You're already losing lots of life with the Unholy Annex. You could play it with Sheldred, and then when you ever draw a card, you gain that life back, like just to not impale yourself immediately. I don't know, man. If sweepers were good, you could like draw a card on turn 3 and then turn 4 Wrath of God, but I don't know if the sweepers are that good against mono red. You really don't want to be paying 2 life against mono red. All right, so you're not going to pay 2 life against mono red in the control version of like where to play this. It's still very expensive. I mean, all the draw engines do this for free. Annex, you pay 3 mana once, and then you draw cards for free for the rest of your life. I don't know. I think you can't really play this, because unless you can manipulate your own life total very easily as red or Mardu aggro or Rakdos aggro against a control opponent, you can't really make use of this card, I don't think. Yeah, I don't know. I was excited at first, but I think it's too expensive to manipulate your life total in aggro, and in control I think you don't want to pay the 2 life. It's also expensive. All the draw engines do it better. I don't know. I was excited about that card, but now I don't think I am as much. The Quag Feast, a 2-mana sorcery rare. Choose target creature, planeswalker, or vehicle. Mill 2 cards, then destroy the chosen permanent if its mana value is less than or equal to the number of cards in your graveyard. This card's good. I'm out of T. It does the opposite of Bitter Triumph, which I did not include here. Bitter Triumph is a 2-mana instant where you can destroy target creature or planeswalker, but in order to do that, you either have to pay 3 life or you have to discard a card, which is a key part of a lot of reanimator strategies. Because sometimes you get the card you want to reanimate in your hand and it's too expensive to cast, so you gotta discard it to the graveyard. So Bitter Triumph fills that niche. This does the opposite effect, where you're milling cards from the top of your deck. It's only 2, and then you're pretty much gonna be able to kill anything. Like on turn 2, you'll kill their 2-drop because you have, at least 2 cards in the graveyard. And then if you draw it late, if you're in a dedicated mill deck, like you're gonna have plenty of cards late. So you can basically kill anything. It is at sorcery speed though, which is a lot worse than instant speed. And in terms of how many removal spells you really have to fit, like often I only have space for Bitter Triumph. Really. There's really not that much space in Reanimator decks because so many of your deck slots get taken up with 8 mana 8/8s that there actually isn't that much space for early interaction. And it's sorcery speed. So it's also a rare. That's kind of weird that it's a rare. This is the kind of thing that could definitely be like an uncommon or common, I think. Yeah, I don't really know that you want to play this over Bitter Triumph. It could be really good in the Sultai Squirming Emergence deck, because you really got to race to get your graveyard as filled as possible. Sorcery speed hurts, but you could definitely put it in that deck over Bitter Triumph. Then you really have no ways to discard from your hand, I don't think. But milling aggressively is, has to be done to get that deck going. It could be good. I think specifically in Squirming Emergence, it could be very good because 2 cards really does make a difference. In other Reanimator decks, I feel like the discard from hand to instant speed is probably better. But if you need to fill your graveyard to even cast Squirming Emergence, like your core Reanimator spell, then maybe this is very good. We'll see. All right, Speed Demon. I'm excited for this card. It's a 5-mana 5/5. It's a legendary creature. It is a demon. And as we know in Standard, demons are very relevant. You need a demon on your side of the battlefield in order to get the plus life side of the Unholy Annex. Otherwise, you're draining yourself for 2 every turn. And once you have a demon, you drain your opponent for 2 and you gain 2. This sucker is a 5/5 with flying and trample. I like that. It's got Start Your Engine, so it's very late. But if you had something else starting your engine early, like the Colorless land, that'd be good. Also, let's see. Yeah, the beginning of your end step is when the Annex triggers. So I think if you had the Annex sitting around at other points in the game, I think you'd get up to max speed pretty easily. And even if you have like just the 2-mana bat lying around to chip in every turn, like you could get your engine going by the time this comes down for sure. At the beginning, although you don't really want a turn 1 colorless land because you often want to cut down a duress to turn 1. So I don't know. You could probably get the engine going at some point if you really wanted to. At the beginning of your end step, you draw X cards and lose X life, where X is your speed. I'm out of water too now. This card looks sweet, dude. It's the Speed Demon. It's so aggressive. Man. I mean, if you have Sheldred out, you're pretty happy, right? You gain 2 life for every card you draw there, and then you lose 1 life for every card. So you're netting up, obviously. So you can go like turn 3 Annex, turn 4 Sheldred, turn 5 Speed Demon. And you're just drawing so many cards. It's very attractive to play. The issue is, as I explained at during the preface speech that I gave, is that you already have built-in 5-drops in the deck. You already have 5 of them. Sorry, you already have 4 of them. You have 4 Annexes, which double as both your 3-drop play and your 5-drop play. So from a deck construction standpoint, you don't need to play any 5-drops. You already have plenty of things to do on 5. So you don't need this card. But boy, does draw X cards and lose X life, like with Sheldred out. I mean, obviously it also gets blunted by the Annex, right? So if you're at speed 2 and you draw 2 cards and lose 2 life, but it's a demon, so then you net the life back with the Annex. I mean, it's very good. I think you got to try this card. The only question is, do you dilute the deck to play more Sheldred? Like, that is the question. Do you reduce the number of Bloodletters and Archfiends just to jam Sheldred, just so you don't die to the other effects? I don't know. I mean, that card looks sweet. We got to try it out. It's the Speed Demon. It's so much draw power. I like it. Yeah. But, I mean, you have to start the engine early, so I think you have to run for the Colorless land that starts the engine early. Otherwise, I don't know what you're doing, because I don't know if any other start the engine cards are going to get into that deck. Otherwise, just draw 1, lose 1 life. That's not that bad. You got to play this card. We got to play this card. I think we got to throw 2 of them in that deck. I don't know what's getting cut, but oh man, it's so bad from consistency. You don't need it. You don't need it at all. You already have 4 5-drops, so you don't need 6 5-drops. But it's so good. We have to try it. Okay. Boom Mobile, a 4-mana 5/5 vehicle. It is not a creature. When this vehicle enters, add 4 mana of any one color. Spend this mana only to activate abilities. Exhaust. Pay X, 2 in a red. This vehicle deals X damage to any targets. Put a +1/+1 counter on this vehicle. You can only activate each exhaust ability once. It also has crew 2. So you play this on 4. You add 4 mana. If you exhaust immediately, you deal 1 damage to any target. It's not very oppressive by itself. The question is, like, I guess, can you loop this somehow for some kind of infinite combo? Where, like, you bounce, you get 4 mana, you bounce it, it makes 4 mana, more mana, that somehow lets you bounce it again, you make 4 more mana, and then you exhaust for like 20, and then double them from 20 to 0. There aren't really that many good blink effects in Standard. I've tried to make a couple blink decks, and they all kind of fail hideously. Like, there's the 3 mana Guardian of Girapur that will let you, you know, blink something. I don't even know if it blinks artifacts. That's a good point. Probably not. Probably just creatures. You'd have to crew it, and then Guardian of Girapur. When it enters, exile to 1 target creature or artifact you control. Oh, look at that. Okay. You can return to the battlefield under its control at the beginning of the next end step. Meh. I don't know. I don't know if this is a standard card. I think you'd have to know about some special combo that I don't know about. Burnout Bastronaut. A 1 mana 1/1. It's the first goblin we've seen. There are some goblins in the set. I'm not really convinced it's pushed enough to get even close to mice. Like, as I said in the beginning, you have to ask yourself, is it better than turn 1 Heartfire Hero, turn 2 Manifold Mouse? And the answer is, if the answer is no, that's probably not going to get played, unfortunately, if it's red. This is a 1 mana Goblin Warrior 1/1 with Menace. It's got Start Your Engines. That's good. We want Start Your Engines on the early cards, so that gets started early. You can pay 2 mana to have this creature get +1/+0 until end of turn. Okay. Max speed, it gets Double Strike. Double Strike is good. As we know, in Standard, Double Strike is actually quite good. Yeah, I mean, this card's okay. So, like, maybe by, like, turn 3 or 4, you can have a 1/1 Double Striker. And if you toss Monstrous Rage on it, we already know that's good, right? That's +3, so that's a 4/4 Double Strike. But you get that for free with Manifold Mouse on turn 2, right? For the most part. Yeah. I mean, you have to push goblins hard. This is a good card in a vacuum, but compared to Standard, you need a really good goblin backdrop to make this worth it. Chandra, Spark Hunter. I think the only Planeswalker... No, there's one... I think there's an artifact Planeswalker. I don't know if it's a Planeswalker or not. Yeah, it is. All right, one of the only Planeswalkers in the set. Chandra, Spark Hunter. A 4 mana 4 loyalty. Legendary Planeswalker named Chandra. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose up to 1 target vehicle you control. Until end of turn, it becomes an artifact creature and gains haste. This is huge. There are only a couple cards in the set that deal with the issue of vehicles needing creatures to crew them. This is one of the cards that does it. Even if it doesn't have a pilot, you can just magically levitate the vehicle and turn it into a artifact creature with haste and swing for the fences. So this is good because it is perhaps one of the only cards in the set that solves the core issue of vehicles, which is that somebody has got to pilot these suckers. It's got a +2 ability. You can sacrifice an artifact or discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Okay, so you can always just +2. +2 is a lot of loyalty to game, by the way. That is non-trivial to go from 4 to 6. You can always just discard then draw, or you can sack an artifact. Not sure who really wants to be sacking artifact, but you could do it. Like, there might be some useless artifacts if you have nothing to pilot it, for example, because all your pilots got killed. You can pay 0 to create a 3/2 colorless vehicle artifact token with crew 1. And then, of course, at the beginning of your combat, you could then magically levitate that vehicle you just made and attack with haste, but you can't stack them. Like, you could make more every single turn. Every turn you could 0 and make another 3/2 colorless artifact vehicle, but you can only choose up to 1 of them to make an artifact creature in haste at the beginning of the turn. So you can't... If you could mass a fleet and levitate all of them every turn and attack, that'd be, I think, quite powerful and worth playing. But the fact that you can only do 1 at a time is not incredible. And so then, like, the other question is, can we, like, cheat out big vehicles that are hard to crew and then use Chandra to get them going? I mean, ideally, you'd have the giant vehicle in turn 3 that is impossible to crew, and then use Chandra to, like, cheat it into being crewed. But I don't know of any like that, so I don't know. -7, you get an emblem with whenever an artifact you control enters. Emblem deals 3 damage to any target. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, artifacts have to be good. In order to ultimate, you have to plus, which is just a draw discard. And you need to block with stuff to keep her alive. And you can kind of make blockers with the 0 ability, but they can't actually block unless they have pilots. You already know what I think about that. Count on luck. Red, red, red for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. I like this effect. But you have to ask yourself, in red decks, I'm thinking, well, first of all, it has to be mono red. Mono red control is almost impossible to build. because demons have 6 toughness. And so really there's no red card that deals 6 damage. That's the core issue with mono red control. I've enjoyed mono red control in the past, but as long as 6/6 demons exist, they need to print cards that deal 6 damage. Otherwise you just can't play mono red control because, well, you got to spend 2 cards every time just to kill their one thing. That's ridiculous. So this is in red aggro then, because control does not exist and it's red, red, red. So the question you're asking yourself is, would you play this over Screaming Nemesis in 3-drop slot? So against aggro in the mirror, you probably get run over if you do that. You go turn 3 count on luck, they go Screaming Nemesis, they hit you in the face. You draw some stuff, but I don't think you really come back from that. I don't think that's great. In control, it's a little more interesting, right? Against mono black or like Abzan or tokens or whatever, and you turn 3, you slam this thing. Against white, it's not very good. They just get lost immediately. You might not even get any value out of that. I think you're drawing extra cards every turn. This type of effect can be good. I just think the Screaming Nemesis is so good at what it does. It's a 3-mana 3/3 with haste. It's really difficult in the mirror to navigate. You actually can't attack very profitably, especially if there's first strike. First strike damage comes in, hits Nemesis first, then the Nemesis redirects it wherever it wants. Like, it's very difficult to navigate that combat, especially with first strike and double strike around. So, and then it also answers the 6/6s, because at least you trade. You deal 3 damage in combat, and then you can deal an extra 3 damage. So it's really good at dealing with situations standard. I love this type of effect in general. I am not sure it is better than Screaming Nemesis in that deck. Maybe if you have a crazy goblin deck, like, you know, a historic goblin deck where, like, I don't know, you got a lot of goblins and they pop off and you just need a lot of fodder for them, this could be quite good, but I'm not sure this fits into red aggro in standard. I'm gonna take another break, go get some more water. And we're back. I'm getting tired too, because I was up late last night fighting for #1 mythic. Futilely. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. All right, this card's actually exciting. Daretti, Rocketeer Engineer. 5 mana, star/5, legendary creature, Goblin Artificer. Its power is equal to the greatest mana value among artifacts you control. When it enters or attacks, choose target artifact card in your graveyard. You may sacrifice an artifact. If you do, return the chosen card to the battlefield. This is the premier Reanimator spell in standard. It's better than Repair and Recharge, because the issue, I mean, I'm thinking about Portal to Phyrexia. Portal to Phyrexia here. There could be other stuff you want to reanimate, but Portal to Phyrexia is really good and has a great end of the battlefield effect. So you reanimate Portal to Phyrexia. It's not good in standard today, because you sweep all your opponent's creatures, and then they top deck a hasty creature and beat you over the head anyway. Now, you reanimate Portal to Phyrexia, and you're left over with a 5 mana 9/5, right? Let's see. Mana value. Yeah, you're left over with a 5 mana 9/5. Good luck, mono red. Whatever you top deck is not getting through that. Like, we at least have a blocker out. And then, whenever it attacks, you can do it again. I mean, this assumes you have random artifacts lying around. I'm sure we can build a deck that has something like that. Like, yeah, just run the meat grinder, the tunnel grinder. Run the turn 3 tunnel grinder, and then that'll be the artifact. You sack that, and then you go get the Portal to Phyrexia or whatever. Like, this is much better than the whatever Repair and Recharge, because it leaves you a body behind, and then that body can also attack and try to get. Like, this is a fantastic card. This is a really good card for the Reanimator style. It is a 5 mana Reanimator spell, which is pretty standard. Like, there are some 4 mana ones, but 5 mana is not crazy for what people are seeing, and has huge upside. It has a creature body and a repetitive effect. Whenever you attack, you can do it again. So this card's sweet. We got to build some decks around this. Absolutely. Maybe he's in a wheelchair. Maybe he's just in a regular chair. I don't know. Draconautics Engineer. Is it better than any turn 2 mice plays? It's a 2 mana 2/2 Goblin Artificer with exhaust. You can pay a red. Other creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. Put a +1 counter on this creature. You can only activate an exhaust ability once. It has a second exhaust ability you can independently also activate once. For 4 mana, you can create a 4/4 red dinosaur dragon, a dinosaur dragon creature token with flying. So, I mean, if you had 7 mana, you could play the Engineer for 2. You could pay 4 to make a dragon. You could pay 1 more and give the dragon haste and also put a counter on itself. It's weird that it doesn't give itself haste. I'd be way more excited about this if you could make it a 2 mana 2/2 or just a 3 mana 3/3 with haste. That'd be a really solid card, but the fact that it doesn't give itself haste is a little bit annoying. It gives other creatures haste, right? So it's not like you play your 1-drop You play your 2-drop, you play this on 3, you don't need to pay a red to give your 1-drops and 2-drops haste. They're already been down. They don't need any help. So that's kind of weird. It's intended to like give the dragon haste. You pay 5 mana, 4 to make the dragon and 1 to give it haste. That's what it's doing here. Yeah, it's probably not better than Eddie the Mice. It's not better than the Manifold Mouse, and it's not better than the Emberheart Challenger or whatever. Those cards are very good. I don't think you take anything out for this guy. Can give haste. It makes dragons. Could it even go in a dinosaur deck? A dinosaur dragon deck? Maybe, but the answer is no. Not really. Not really. I don't know. I don't see it. I don't think Goblins is pushed enough to make it happen. Full throttle. 6 mana sorcery. After this main phase, there are 2 additional combat phases. At the beginning of each combat this turn, untap all creatures that attacked this turn. It's on a sorcery. So what deck wants a 6 mana sorcery but also has enough creatures lying around to attack multiple times? It'll finish games out of nowhere. It's not as bad as I thought at first glance. I'm thinking about, you know, like you can run a single Zur, and out of nowhere you can power up your overlords and attack for a lot of damage in a way that fundamentally changes the course of the game. The thing is, with this, you already need the creature out. If you already have pretty much any overlord or like a 6/6 demon or something out, you can probably end the game on the spot out of nowhere. But otherwise, it's a dead card in your hand. Doesn't do a lot. This might even be Teamer colors, right? This is red Chandra. I don't know who Green Lady is. And then the little, I forget what that little thing is called too. I think it might even Teamer colors. Maybe this is meant to be in a Teamer deck. Where you got some overlords and then out of nowhere you cast this thing and slam them in there. Because like other over-the-top things you can do in Teamer. Teamer has a lot of flexibility in what you can do. Like you can play the, I always forget what it's called. It's like XXX green blue to make a copy of a bunch of different stuff. And that's like an end game thing you can do. This could be a cool end game for that deck. The problem is if you cast it and they pick off your only creature, then you're sad. So you can only cast it if they're tapped out or you have so many creatures out that they can't possibly overcome. Yeah. It's niche. It's really expensive, and you have to have the creatures out. The thing with Zur is that you can slam it out of nowhere and attack out of nowhere, which is really powerful. But this is they'll see it coming. I don't know. Gastel Thrill Roller, a 3-mana 4/2 vehicle. It is not a creature. It has trample and haste. When this vehicle enters, it becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. Okay, so it enters with haste, and it immediately becomes an artifact creature. That's great. It also has crew too, so like on subsequent turns, you can crew it, which isn't so bad. It's got 3 mana to discard it. Return this card. Oh, sorry. If you pay 3 mana and discard a card, you can return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Activate only as a sorcery. Okay. This card is Squee, and Squee is not played in standard, right? That's what we're comparing it to. Is it better than Squee? And if so, Squee is not played in favor of Screaming Nemesis. Is it better than Screaming Nemesis? That's like the question we're asking here. Squee, 3 mana, 2/2, that when it attacks, you create another 1/1. You can do that every single turn. You know, it used to be pretty good against control. And then when it dies, you can pay 4 and exile like 3 or 4 other cards, bring it back. Keep doing that over and over. This is similar. When this thing dies, you can pay 3 and discard a card and then return it to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So the next time it dies, it's gone forever. Only as a sorcery, which is fine. That makes sense. And it would come in with haste again. And as a creature. So it's a Squee that can only be used twice. It does have trample, which is pretty big, and it's 4/2, which hits hard. But in terms of 3 drops, is it going to replace Screaming Nemesis? I don't think so, because again, the Nemesis fills the niche of it's pretty good in the mirror, and it's also good against 6/6 demons. It's very rarely a bad card. It is almost always a very strong draw. And this one is not quite the same. It's not the same. It has to be better. If you're gonna fit into an existing deck, it has to be better basically, or it has to be in some deck that actually cares about artifact vehicles. Hazaret, God Seeker, a 2 mana 5/3 legendary creature. God, a mythic rare. Hazaret, a beloved card. It's got indestructible and haste. It's got start your engines as well. So if you have no speed, you start your speed up. If you pay 1 and tap it, target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked. Hazaret can't attack or block unless you have max speed. It's pretty hard to get to max speed this quickly. This is not a card you want in your opening hand. It's a 2 mana thing that does absolutely nothing. You don't really want to be paying 1 extra on one of your turns to make one of your creatures unblockable. That's not an awful effect to have, but 2 damage, you're chipping in for just a tiny bit of damage late game. It's not like you can do it to all your creatures. Only 1 creature. And it's legendary too. You can only get 1 of them. And you also probably don't want the... We got to check out the colorless lands thing. I think it's only colorless. If there's a red land that does not come in tapped, that starts your engines immediately, that you could throw into a mono red deck with 0 cost to you, maybe you could throw one of these in there. And then you hope to draw it late game and out of nowhere have a 2 mana 5/3 indestructible haste. It does not get through a 6/6 demon though, but indestructible is pretty good. It's a good stat line. Like, this would be a good card otherwise. You just really don't want it early. It's completely dead early. So, it probably won't see play, I don't think, if we're being realistic. You have to, I think the land has to be there. You have to already have other start your engine cards in the deck that are good. And I think I've yet to see one I really want to play. And anything in red that's going to be played has to be better than mice or has to make its own archetype like goblins. So I feel like the most likely home for this is in the goblin deck that has the 1 mana 1/1 goblin that starts your engines. And I don't see that deck being as competitive as mice. So that's my thought on that one. Howl Squad Heavy, a 3 mana 2/3 goblin mercenary with start your engines. Other goblins you control have haste. At the beginning of combat your turn, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. That token attacks each combat, or this combat if able. At max speed, you can tap to add 1 red for each goblin you control. This feels like a non-standard card, like a non-standard format card. I feel like there's lots of this effect. Like, goblins have all been printed for a long time, and there are lots of repetitive effects, I would say. This feels spiritually roughly like a lot of other goblins I have seen. Spits out a 1/1 token every time, and then tapping. Add red for each goblin you control. Like, you have a lot of mana, you spit out more goblins. It's a very goblin thing to do. Unless goblins are a true thing in standard, I don't really see this being played. And again, I have yet to see goblins be pushed enough from this set to warrant playing this card. So that's my thought on that. We're on to green. We're almost through the main colors. Then we get to gold. I don't know how long this video has been. It's gonna be a long video. Afterburner Expert. It's a 3 mana 4/2 Goblin Artificer. It's got Exhaust. You pay 4 mana to put 2/+1 counters on this creature. You can only do that once. I don't know if that carries through into the grave. If this thing dies and it comes back, can you do it again? I want to say no, but I don't know. Whenever you activate an Exhaust ability, return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield for free. I think this card's not bad. I don't know who wants it, but if you got, over the course of the game, you got 4 of these in your graveyard, and you activate any Exhaust ability, and you get all 4 4/2s back, that is a lot of beef to dump onto the battlefield. The question is, are any other Exhaust abilities? Obviously, like, it itself can do that. You could have the 4th one could be you playing itself, and then the next turn, or by that point, maybe you actually have 7 lands. You can then exhaust immediately and get the other 3 back. Could be okay. I mean, the problem is that green sucks in general. So, yeah, I don't know. I like it. I have to see if any other exhaust ability is good. It itself in 4s would not be terrible. I mean, late game would be a menace to deal with. Get a couple of these back on the battlefield out of nowhere, like that adds a lot of pressure. I like this card. I think it's well designed. The problem is we need a green deck that's worth playing. That's the main issue here. Aganosaur Rex, 5 mana, 8/8 with trample. You can cycle it for 3 to discard it and draw a card. When you cycle this card, put 2/+/+ counters on up to 1 target creature or vehicle. It gains trample and indestructible until end of turn. This is a fantastically designed card. Turn 3. If you're playing green, you've got overstatic creatures. You've got your 1 mana 2/2. You've got your 2 mana 3/3. You go to combat. You attack. Your opponent thinks they can block. If they do, you cycle this out of nowhere, give one of them +2/+2 and trample and indestructible. You win the trade, and this thing is just sitting in your graveyard. If they don't block, you keep it around and slam it on turn 5 as a 5 mana 8/8. There are some decks that will kill it immediately, and there are some decks that will have no answers and basically means they lose on the spot or on the next turn. It's a really well-designed card. Again, the question is, green has sucked for like 2 years. Is there a green deck in general that is worth playing that you could add this to? And the answer is maybe. For the first time ever, maybe. There is another dinosaur we'll get to that is a dinosaur lord that actually makes dinosaurs look playable. It might not be green, it might be Gruul, but either green or Gruul, it is possible that this card finds a home. It is actually possible. District Mascot. I referenced this at the beginning of the video because there was that other mount. There is a white mount. This is a 1-mana 0/0 dog mount. This creature enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. You can pay 2 to remove 2 +1/+1 counters from this creature and destroy target artifact. Whenever this creature attacks while saddled, put a +1/+1 counter on it. It has saddle 1. This card is probably very good, especially if any artifacts are played. It's basically the same as the Hopeful Initiate. This card was a fantastic card in Standard for a long time. A 1-mana 1/2 with training. Whenever it attacks with another creature with greater power, put a +1 counter on it. You can also pay 3 to remove 2 counters from it and destroy target artifact or enchantment. This card is basically the same, except a little easier to pull off, right? For the Hopeful Initiate, you play it on 1, can't attack, doesn't have haste. Turn 2, you play a 2-drop, and you can't attack with a 2-drop, so the 1-drop attacks as a 1-mana 1/2. And then finally, on turn 3, you can attack with your 1-drop and 2-drop. And if your 2-drop is more powerful, then the Initiate levels up, and now it's a 1-mana 2/3. You're doing the thing. You're getting the counters. Mascot's a little easier. You slam it on 1. Turn 2, you play another creature, and then you can immediately saddle with it, right? So you can immediately attack, and now you've got a 1-mana 2/2 attacking. Also, the effect to destroy is cheaper. 3 mana is pretty expensive. This is only 2 mana to remove 2 +1 counters and destroy any target artifact. Could be super relevant. This is a fantastic card, and yeah, much needed in green. This is a really good aggressive card that also has a huge amount of upside in destroying target artifact. I could see this being very good. And it also fills out green 1-drops. The other good green 1-drop is the Paw Patch Recruit, right? The 1-mana 2/1 that also can make other ones whenever you target it, put counters on something else. That's very good. This is another good 1-drop in green, and green does not have that many good 1-drops. I guess there's also the Evolving Adaptive, though, which is similar in spirit. Yeah, this card's good. It's going to do the thing. We want this card around. We'll see how it goes. It's a good card. Is it enough? Is a combination of this and the Rex and the Expert enough to make green playable versus mono red and Sunfall? I don't know, man. I don't know. I've lost all hope. I've lost hope on green a long time ago. 3-mana star 4 artifact vehicle. It's not a creature yet. This vehicle's power is equal to the number of lands you control. So it comes in as a 3-mana 3/4, most likely. Whenever this vehicle enters or attacks, you can search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped. Okay. Kind of like the turtle, the 4-mana 3/3 turtle. So it's immediately a 3-mana 4/4 because you get that 4th land immediately. You could crew it for 4, so you'd... Yeah, I guess, yeah, you want your 4-mana 4/4 to come down, then you can crew it, swing with this thing, get another land. A basic land. So you have to be running basics in your deck. You can't be running all fancy, rare dual lands. Kind of reminds you of the Schooner. The Subterranean Schooner. I know that's not how you pronounce that card. Whenever it attacks our creature that crewed it, explores, so you could get a land that way. Feels similar in spirit to this card. What do I think of it? I don't know, man. You have to have creatures to crew it. That's the core issue with all these things. Land is good. I feel like this ain't it. I feel like it's not the one. March of the Whirlooos. 6-mana enchantment, mythic rare. Creatures you control have base, power, and toughness 6/6 and are oozes in addition to their other types. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, if it's not their turn, you create a 3/3 green elephant creature token. Alright, here's the thing. There's already a card that does this in Standard. It's called... Doll something. Dollhouse Box. Dollmaker Shop. You can play it on 2. Where's this sucker? Hey. Didn't I just add this thing? Oh, is it on the 6? There it is. It comes in on the expensive side. I guess it adds it up. I don't know what it does. Okay, you can play it on 2. Whenever one or more non-toy creatures attack, you create a 1/1 toy, whatever. All right, then you play it on 6 or level up to 6. Creatures you control at base, power, and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. This is roughly the same as the Ooze, except you can play it on 2 to facilitate your early strategy. I think it does it better than the ooze, because this probably, like, you want a lot of weenie creatures to do this, so you're probably in white. Like, this is a curve, an expensive curve topper for Selesnya enchantments. You got a bunch of 1/1s around, you slam this, they all become 6/6s, and you swing for the fences. And then, I don't know, somehow if they survive that turn, or you have nothing because your battlefield has been empty from a prior Sunfall, then if they cast stuff on your turn, you get 3/3 elephants that are actually 6/6 oozes. Yeah, that convert into oozes. Yeah, I guess that's the gimmick. But they just won't play stuff on your turn. I think it's probably very easy to play around. So, and it's expensive. I think people almost don't even play the doll shop today anyway. And so to take away the 2-mana side and just have a hard 6-drop enchantment, I think is asking too much. I think it's asking too much. Okay. Ovia, the Automac Artisan. 4 mana, 1/2, legendary creature, human artificer. Each creature that's attacking one of your opponents has trample. Okay, that's an interesting line of text. Pay a green and tap it. You can put a creature or vehicle card from your hand onto the battlefield. If you put an artifact on the battlefield this way, put 2+1 counters on it. No, feels bad. Feels gimmicky. This is like that other card, Kona, where if it's tapped on your second main phase, you can put something from your hand onto the battlefield. That card is also gimmicky and hard to pull off. Basically, it's a creature that doesn't have an answer to the battlefield effect. It's a 1/2. Dies to everything under the sun. Even Shock, Burst Lightning kills it. Even Cut Down kills it. And then, yeah, if you survive next turn, you can dump an expensive creature. But, yeah, I don't think I'd really count on that happening. I'd rather run a Reanimator strategy for expensive stuff, because then it's roughly safe in your graveyard until it's time to strike. It's funny it has that first line of text. Each creature that's attacking when your opponent has trample. I guess it's to give the giant big thing you put into the battlefield, then give that trample. If we had a way to give this haste, it's so expensive. It's already 4 mana. You need the extra one. It's too much. It's too much to make this work. I'm not playing that card. Regal Imperiosaur. That's what I'm talking about, baby. This is the only thing that can make green good. A 3 mana, 5/4. Other dinosaurs you control get +1/+1. It's it, baby. We gotta run dinos. It's time. This could be a legitimate deck in Standard. It's been a long time since I played dinos. And they were not very good when they came out. But this could change everything. Cruel dinos, baby. What do I got in here? I got this. I haven't touched this deck in so long that the, the lands have Reckless Stormseeker. What other stuff that oh man. Remember when Kumano was the thing? I liked Kumano. I like that card. Yeah. The Frillback is probably the worst card here. Dump the Frillback, although maybe artifact removal is actually relevant. Keep the 3 mana 6/6. Keep the Carnosaur to come back later and plop your 3 mana Lord in here. Makes your other dinos bigger. The Yearling's okay. And when another dinosaur enters, you can have its base power become that. So then the base power of this becomes, you know, whatever this thing is, 5, and then it gets +1/+1, so it's 6. Like, that's a curve right there, dude. That is a curve on, I guess, like, in similar power level to, you know, turn 1 hero, turn 2 mouse. You could go turn 2 Yearling with trample, turn 3 either Hammer Skull or the new 3 mana 5/4 dino and swing for a lot with trample. That's pretty sweet. You got the It's Quinth whatever legendary creature. When it enters, you can pay 2. And when you do, target dinosaur you control deals damage equals to power to another. Yeah, like, this deck had pieces together. It's worth another look, for sure. And then we have the new 5 mana dino. Although I don't know if it's better than the Dracosaur. Now that we have the Dracosaur here. The, like, cycle thing to give your things indestructible. I'm not sure about that. I mean, Dracosaur's a lot of value if you can land it. The other one's just a 5 mana 8/8 with trample. Maybe Dracosaur's better. If you play Monogram, maybe you play the other one. But I think the 3 mana Dino Lord could make dinos actually playable. Plus we got some other 1-drops. Like, it could be good. It could be good. We're gonna try it. I think it could make it vastly better than what it was before. Thunderous Velocipede, a 3 mana 5/5 vehicle. Artifact with trample. Each other vehicle and creature you control enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it if its mana value is 4 or less. Otherwise, if it's more than 4 mana, it enters with 3 additional +1 counters on it. It's got crew 3. It doesn't spit out something to crew it. I don't see it, dude. I don't see it. I don't think so. I'm getting tired. I've been talking forever. I'm tired from not sleeping last night. Web Strike Elite. A 2-mana 3/3 with reach. Insect Archer. You can cycle it for X green and a green to discard it and draw a card. When you cycle this card, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment with mana value X. So if you cycle it for 3, you kill a 1-mana artifact or enchantment, which I don't think you really need to do. If you cycle it for 4, you kill a 2-mana artifact or enchantment, which I don't think you really need to be doing. You can kill a Beanstalk, but by that turn, it's already too late. It's really painful to pay 4 to kill their Beanstalk after they've already gotten 2 draws off it. Like, you feel so far behind. Whew. It's very expensive. I think if you're playing this card, it's a 2-mana 3/3 with Reach. Reach is not a bad stat line. Reach blocks pesky little pixies. It blocks pesky little bats. And a 2-mana 3/3 body is totally fine. I don't think you're going to get much value out of the cycling because it's so expensive to do that. And how much mana do you really have lying around in your aggro deck, right? You're going to run 22 to 24 lands. You don't have like 10 lands lying around to cycle it to kill a big enchantment artifact. I don't think so. I think you're playing this. It's a 2-mana 3/3 reach. That's like acceptable to play. At Chick. All right, we're all for green. We're in the home stretch here. We're doing the gold cards. At Chick, Emerald Radiant. A 6-mana legendary creature, Insect Druid. It's a 3/3. When it enters, create a 1/1 green insect creature token for each artifact and or creature card in your graveyard. Whenever another insect you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on At Chick. Each opponent loses 1 life. I think that this card is actually pretty cool. Let's see. These things don't have flying, do they? No, the insects don't have flying. That's too bad. That would make it a lot better. It's not bad. Like, I could see this fitting into the Sultai Reanimator deck. It's only 6 mana, so it's pretty cheap to reanimate as far as things go. It's not 7 mana Atraxa. It's not 10 mana Omniscience. Is Omniscience 10 mana? It's 6. It's on par with I don't know, the Lukewarm Warm Bellow Bear. I don't know what that card's called. That's a 6-mana bear. That one mills you for 4, and then you get all your lands back for the graveyard to battlefield, which is pretty good. This one could get you a whole bunch of chump blockers, or even a potential win con. Like, I guess, well, if you only have exactly 6 down there, maybe it's not as good as I thought. If you have exactly 6 down there, you reanimate. This is one of the ones that gets one of the creatures that gets out of there. And maybe you have like 2 or 3 creatures and you get 2 or 3 little insects. No, that's not as good as I thought. You reanimate this late game. If you got like 10 creatures down there, no, this deck's terrible. No, it's already bad because you don't want creatures in that deck. You got the pixie in there. You got 4 of these. You got 4 pixies. You have no other artifacts creatures. No, that deck's terrible. Never mind. Never mind. This card's bad. I don't know what to do with it. Yeah. Man, if you get a lot of creatures down there and a bunch of random 1/1s that are all great, you know, blocking fodder, you attack. If they block, they lose 1 life anyway. If they get in, they deal a lot of damage. In theory, it could be a very cool curve topper. In reality, it's probably not good and pretty expensive. All right, the first of the Gear Hulks. 4 mana, 4/4. Artifact Creature Construct. With First Strike and Trample, when it enters, you can search your library for up to 2 artifact creature and or enchantment cards, mana value 1 or less, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. It's a weird card. What are the 1-drop artifact creatures or enchantments that you want? I cannot think of many enchantment or creatures. Although Toolbox is interesting, like you could get a single Authority of Consuls. If you just want to put 1 in the deck, you could go get that. There is a 1-mana artifact. It's like Duskmourn Reliquary. That's okay. It's like 1 mana, but you have to sack, I think, another permanent to cast it, or maybe another artifact to cast it, and then you can exile a creature or a non-land permanent. I don't know. Dusk Rose Reliquary. What does this card do? Yeah, additional cost to cast it. Sack an artifact or creature. It itself is ward 2. You can exile target artifact or creature an opponent controls. So like you could fetch this, but then you sack another artifact or creature to play it, which is why it's not heavily played in standard. The other thing you could do is you could play it in like an aggro deck. Like the Rabbits deck, for example, already runs between 2 and 4 of the 4 mana bunny thing. you know, it's a fantastic lord. You could run this instead, and then you could go fetch up 2 more 1-drops to your hand. And there are some very good 1-drops, including the Paw Patch Recruit, which can then be cast for 3 as well to get lots of value. So would you, like, if you run that over the 4-drop Lord Rabbit, I mean, that card just makes that deck sing, right? All your rabbits +1/+1 is just really tough to deal with. And this thing has First Strike and Trample. And First Strike is good against mono red. I don't think you play this card over the Rabbit Lord. So could we play it in our new Selesnya tokens deck? With our new 1-mana green dog? You could go get more dogs. You could use the dog to saddle the other dogs. I think you can. I think one dog could mount the other dog and saddle. I think that could work. I think that's legal unless you can't saddle something else that is saddleable. I don't remember reading that rule. Maybe that's the case. I wasn't playing Magic in the year I was gone where saddling was introduced to standard. It's a weird card. 1 mana is so cheap. I don't know where to put this card. First Strike is good against mono red. Otherwise, I'm not so sure. If there was a good 1 mana artifact or enchantment or removal spell, that'd be fantastic. Go get that, block the First Striker, get 2 of those things, take both the creatures next turn, game's over, right? But I'm not really aware of one of those. Captain Howler, Sea Scourge. 4 mana 5/4. Legendary creature, Shark Pirate with Ward. Both pay 2 mana and pay 2 life to target this sucker. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn for each card discarded this way. Whenever that creature deals damage to a player this turn, you draw a card. This feels like so hard to do. Like, how are we supposed to be discarding cards? I think cycling is part of the set. So, like, in sealed or limited, you could cycle some random card and get a little bit of extra value and draw a card. It'd be great in sealed. In standard, I don't think we're really discarding that many cards. Like, you discard cards for Reanimator. That's pretty much it. I don't think you want this in your Reanimator deck, though. I don't see it. I'm taking another water and bathroom break. I don't see where this card fits in. Okay, we're back again. I don't know what to do with this card. Caradora, Heart of Alakria. 4 mana, 4/2 legendary creature, human knight. When it enters, you may search your library for a mount or vehicle card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. If 1 or more +1 counters will be put on a creature or vehicle you control, put that many +1 counters on it instead. This feels so random. If it was search your library for a aura and you could go get Shelter by Ghosts, that would be playable. What 5-drop mount or vehicle do you want to fetch to play after this in Selesnya? I don't know. I guess we saw some random one earlier. No, that was like a 3 mana. What was that green one? Not this one. There was some like random, wasn't there like a random? Yeah, the Velocipede. Let's see. When each other vehicle and creatures you control additional +1 counters on it, mana value is 4 or less. So you could fetch this? +1 counter on it? What if we did that into this? Is that any good? Let's see, where is this thing? Play it on 3. This is a human knight, though. No, this is too much, dude. What even is this artwork? Does he have an afro? Or is it a girl? I can't even see what's going on there. Does she have a red hair? Is that her? She's riding a dragon. No, she's falling off of a dragon. She's got a blue sword and a red sword. Oh, she does have red hair. All right. I don't know what this card's doing. Coal Stoke Gear Hulk. 5 mana. 1 black, red. For an artifact creature construct, it's a 5/4 with menace and death touch. When this creature enters, put target creature card mana value 4 or less from a graveyard, onto the battlefield under your control with a finality counter on it. That creature gains menace, death touch, and haste. At the beginning of your next end step, exile that creature. Okay. How good is that? Menace and death touch and haste. I mean, they're probably not blocking the sucker. If you can get back the zombie assassin, give it menace and haste and attack with it. Either opponent can't block or doesn't want to block, and you take half their life out of nowhere. That's not terrible. It's not a demon, though. If it was a demon construct, then we'd be talking. It's really expensive. Menace and death touch is okay. I mean, it's really expensive. 5 drops have to be really good to be played in standard. Like Dracosaur is a 5 mana 5/5 first strike flying dragon. At the beginning of your upkeep, you exile 2 cards. You can play those cards. If you get a land, you make like a 3/3 dinosaur or something like that. That card's not played, right? So like, is this card better than that? Probably not. Probably not is my guess. That's my honest opinion. Debris Beetle, 4 mana 6/6 vehicle artifact. It is not a creature. When it enters, each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. It has crew 2. So you play it on 4, you gain some life, opponent loses some life. Then you crew it with some random thing the next turn, hit him with a 6/6 trample. But if they kill the underlying creature, you have nothing. If every time it attacked, you got the trigger to drain them for 3, I'd be so sold. I'd be absolutely down to make this work. But like, why don't you just run the 4 mana 6/6 flying demon instead of this? You don't need to crew that one. And when you kill their creature, they do lose 2 life. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really not sold on vehicles. Explosive Getaway. This card I'm excited about. A 5 mana sorcery, 3 red and white. Exile up to 1 target artifact or creature. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Explosive Getaway deals 4 damage to each creature. All right, so we got a 5 mana sweeper, but you get to blink one of your creatures. Obviously, this is probably at its best with the prototype artifacts. Right, you blink it and then it comes back as the other half, like the non-prototyped part of it. So in white, the red one's really expensive. The red one's already 5 mana, but the white one is the Steel Seraph. That's a 3 mana 3/3, and then it comes back as like a 6 mana 5/4 that can give itself, lifelink or vigilance and already has flying. And you get the sweeper. That could be a good sequence in standard. Like mono red, you play your thing. Hopefully you don't die yet. You can attack with lifelink at least for 1 turn. If you can survive to turn 5, you can sweep their whole board. You can attack with lifelink first to get 3, sweep their whole board, and then get left over with a 5/4 that can still give you lifelink. I don't know if it's good enough to beat mice, but it's at least a step in the right direction. You can exile, you can blink an artifact or a creature. So obviously anything with a good enter the battlefield effect. So you're looking for 3 and 4 drops, creatures or artifacts with good enter the battlefield effects. Sweep the board and blink it. This card could be very good. Obviously it doesn't kill 6/6 demons, but it kills every other thing in standard. I like it. I like this card a lot. Hopefully we can find a home for it. It's weird because you can only blink one thing. So you don't need like a ton of creatures and artifacts. You need something out in the battlefield to blink. But if you can get some enter the battlefield effect with the sweeper, it could turn the game around. So I think that's a cool card. For Fortune, End Boss, 4 mana, 4/5. Legendary creature, human mercenary. It's got start your engines. Whenever you attack, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Okay, with anything, whenever you attack with anything. Max speed, if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent, or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much +1 instead. I mean, there was a time when Torbrand was in standard, right? And that card was very good. Torbrand? Torbrand, Thane of Redfill. Deals +2 damage. It was a 4-drop that was still played in aggro decks. But it was +2 damage instead. This is only +1. But you do get that free ping from itself. So if you're not at max speed, I think you attack, you get the attack trigger, you ping him for 1. That could turn on max speed if you don't have it already. Then all subsequent damage would then get the +1. If you already have max speed, then off the bat, you deal 2 damage, and then everything else still deals +1 instead. I mean, there's currently no Rakdos aggro deck that wants a curve topper. Like Lizards is an aggro deck. Lizards also would be great at starting the engine. That deck loves pinging the opponent down. This actually could be a very good Lizards curve topper. It's also Mercenary. Yeah, that's got to be where it belongs. Because that's like the Outlaw deck or whatever, right? You attack with your little baby lizards. They automatically ping for 1 off the attack trigger, which will now ping for 2. Plus you get, it's got to be a Lizard curve topper. Okay, I'm excited for this. I mean, Lizards is not like a meta-defining deck. But I told you, if Go for the Throat is bad because artifacts are good, then people will play Shoot the Sheriff. And Shoot the Sheriff is not very good against Lizards, who are all outlaws for the most part. So Lizards could be the most busted deck in standard. I'm calling it now. Probably not. It's an okay deck. But this is a cool curve topper for that deck, and you will absolutely... Also, they already have a card that has this effect, right? I think they already do. Yeah. It's okay. You'll play it in that deck, I guess. It's expensive. It's crazy that 4 mana feels so expensive, but you just died to red mono red so fast. You have to be so fast with your decks. Fearless Swashbuckler. 3 mana 3/3 creature fish pirate. It's got haste. Vehicles you control also have haste. Whenever you attack, if a pirate and a vehicle attacked this combat, draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards. That is a sweet effect. Turn 1, Splagass Siren. Turn 2, the Schooner. Turn 3, Swashbuckler. Crew the Schooner with the Swashbuckler. Attack with your Siren Pirate and the Schooner. Get all your triggers. Draw 3 cards, discard 2. Fill turns, whatever you need. Pirates are not that good in general, in Standard. They always strike me as pretty lackluster. And this may make them marginally less lackluster. This is a good card. I just don't know that Pirates have that much support to be really good in Standard. I like this card a lot. I just don't think the support is there to make a crazy good deck. We will play a Pirates deck on our YouTube channel. It will happen. I will play this card. But I'm already telling you how it's going to go. Pirates without this card are not that good. So Pirates with this card are marginally better. Ketramos, the New Dawn. This is a weird card. 3 mana 4/4 legendary creature god, menace, lifelink, indestructible, can't attack or block unless there are 7 or more cards in exile. That is a hard state to get to. Whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from graveyards and or the battlefield during your turn, you draw a card and lose a life. Who is exiling cards from their graveyard and or the battlefield during your turn? Like, Sunfall is the easiest way to exile a bunch of stuff, right? Do you want to play a 3 mana creature in your Sunfall deck? This is such a weird card to me. I don't understand what this is supposed to be doing. Oh, it's a zombie. It's a zombie thing. Okay. So I think you're supposed to exile zombies from your graveyard to, like, reanimate them or whatever. And that fuels the god. Right, we had the 4-drop. The 4-drop zombie thing where you can tap it and embalm a zombie. That's got to exile it from the graveyard, right? When more cards put exile from graveyards enter the battlefield during your turn, you draw a card and lose 1 life. 7 is so many, right? How are we possibly ever going to get 7 cards in exile from our graveyard? Maybe I'm missing it. Let me know if I'm forgetting something. That's going to take forever. I don't know what you're supposed to do with this card. I don't know. Loot, the Pathfinder. Very cool card. 5 mana, 2/4, legendary creature, beast, noble. It's got double strike and vigilance and haste. So it's a 5 mana, 4/4 with haste and vigilance. Essentially, it's kind of like a questing beast, a little more expensive. But then it's got all these cool abilities on top. You can exhaust. You can do each of these once. Exhaust for green and tap it. So you can play it for 5, attack with double strike fate. Yeah, double strike haste. It's got vigilance, and then after you can tap it to do one of these 3 things each turn, but not all on the same turn. You can pay a green and tap it to add 3 green mana of any 3 mana of any 1 color. Okay. That's very good. That's very good. A lot of Overlords are 3 mana, for example. If you want to play this in Teamer Overlords as a weird curve chopper, and there's lots of space in Teamer to do cool stuff, you could absolutely play it. Slam this on 5, attack. Afterwards, make 3 mana and just play one of your either green or blue Overlords. Very reasonable. If you pay blue and a tap, you can draw 3 cards, which is obviously extremely good. And if you pay red and tap, you deal 3 damage to any target a lightning bolt. So all 3 of these cards, all 3 of these effects are very good. I guess you need it on turn 6 actually, because you need 1 mana open to do this stuff, right? This card's sweet. Pay a blue to draw 3 cards. This card's very good. Draw 3. Pay a blue and tap it to draw 3 cards. This is a fantastic turn 6 play. 3 damage to any target. Could dome someone out of nowhere. This is really good. I'm going to run this. I'm going to run this in my Teamer deck. I'm always looking for weird things to put on top. And that deck has a lot of space. I'm absolutely going to play this. Plus, you can already run the Cornucopia in there. So maybe you could actually play it on 5. You could go Cornucopia on 3 and do something else. I dig it. I think it's a very cool card. Mendicant Core Guidelight. 2 mana, a white and a blue for a star/3 legendary artifact creature robot. Mendicant's Core's power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. It's got Start Your Engines. And then at max speed, whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay 1. If you do, copy it. All right, this card's fantastic. This card is the premier card that's going to go into the Azorius Artifacts deck. I've been mentioning throughout this video. That's got the whatever the heck it's got. This Simulacrum Synthesizer. We now have a decent 2 mana artifact to play. You go turn 2 that thing, turn 3 Synthesizer, and then from then on out, you only need to run 3 drops in the deck. Anytime you play a 3 mana artifact, you're going to get the Synthesizer trigger, and then you're going to pay 1 to copy it. Whenever you cast an artifact, so you pay 1 to copy it. That's pretty busted. This thing's going to be giant. It's going to make the other artifact tokens, this thing pops out giant. Like, this might be the first deck I play in the early access event. I mean, this card's great. This card is exactly what that deck wants. I'm getting tired. I don't have it here, but that deck really suffered for lack of good 2-drops, I think. Like, you have Glass Casket, basically. And, I don't know what else. I can't remember anything else besides Glass Casket that's good. What is this deck called? Blue-White Artifacts. Maze Mind Tome's fine. Get Lost is okay. At one point, I'd even tried the Soulless Jailer as an answer to, like, graveyard stuff. But, yeah, you can probably take out the Maze Mind Tomb because the Braided Net is such an insane card draw spell, and just run 4 of that other new card, and it's going to be good. It's going to be very good. I'm excited for this. The Mimeoplasm, Revered one. Pay X, black, green, and a blue for a Sultai Ooze legendary creature. As Mimeoplasm enters, exile up to X creature cards from your graveyard. It enters with 3+1 counters on it for each creature exiled this way. Okay, so if you pay 6 and you exile 3 cards, you get a 9/9. If you pay 2, Mimeoplasm becomes a copy of target creature card exiled with it, accepts a 0/0, and has this ability. So it's still a 9/9 in this case. It just has all of the abilities of that card, plus also this card. Huh. I don't know what you're supposed to do with this. You could make a 4 mana. You can make a 4 mana for 6 mana. You could make a 4 mana 3/3 that also has a useful ability attached to it. If you could give it hexproof, that'd be interesting. Then you could keep stealing abilities of... no, then you can only do it to creatures that you've already exiled with it when you enter the battlefield. This is a weird card. It feels like a card you're supposed to break by having lots of activated abilities stacked onto one thing. Like, there was that infinite combo. I don't know if it was in standard or not. It was like the Kami of Whispered Hope. I don't know, 3 mana 1/1, and then you use Agatha's Soul Cauldron and do something else. You stack all the activated abilities. I don't really remember. I'm not sure what to do with this card. I don't think it's not that good in standard. Oil Deep Gear Hulk. 4 mana, blue, black, black. For a 4/4 artifact creature construct. It's got lifelink, which is good. It's got ward 1, which is okay. When this creature enters, look at a target player's hand, so either you or your opponent. You may choose a card from it. If you do, that player discards that card, then draws a card. So you can always discard draw to your own hand, but probably more relevant, you can look at your opponent's hand and take their best card and get rid of it. Lifelink. Lifelink is good. Lifelink is good against mono red. 4/4 is pretty decent body. Sheldred is not played in standard currently, for the most part, which is kind of interesting. Do you want this card? Does Dimir want this card? I mean, you can make a Dimir control deck, and you can make the Dimir fairies flash in the cat deck. The cat deck's pretty much stacked with the cat slot. I don't know that you really want to take out the flash cat for anything else in that deck. So do you want this in a Dimir control deck? Against aggro, you can play this on 4, block something, get the lifelink, then sweep with Deadly Cover-Up on 5. That's not that bad. You could also get rid of their next card they'd play, or like try to draw a discard into the deadly cover, but then you only get one. Lifelink is big though. Ward 1's okay. 4/4 body is a big body. It's hard for me to picture what deck wants this, but it's not awful. I mean, your control deck, worst case scenario, you get a 4-mana 4/4 and you go pick out, you know, their Sunfall out of their hand, and then you're left over with a 4/4. It's an artifact creature, doesn't have to go for the throat. Though, like I said, that may have to come out and in favor of Shoot the Sheriff, which will make Lizards the premier deck in Standard. Yeah, I don't know. This card could be okay. I like the lifelink. I like the body. Price is okay. It's got a lot going for it. It's just like a weird middle-of-the-road card. The question is, why is Sheldred not being played? It's a 4-mana 4/5 with Death Touch that draws you life every turn and drains your opponent every turn. People don't bother. You're not playing that. Like, why is the Dimir deck that would want this not playing Sheldred right now? Yeah, close. Pyrewood Gearhulk. 6 mana, 2 red, green for a 7/7 artifact creature construct. It's got Vigilance and Menace. When this creature enters, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain Vigilance and Menace until end of turn. Damage can't be read at this turn. I think it's unplayable. He needs to give stuff haste. Why not giving stuff haste? If you're going to slam it for 6 organically, it itself doesn't have haste. That's a problem. It needs to be an end raise Forerunners, basically. 6 mana is expensive, so expensive that you might want to reanimate it. But if you reanimate it, you're not going to have any creatures. And if you do have creatures, they're all probably mana dorks to help you ramp into it or something. So like those are going to be tapped anyway and not benefit from the +2/+2. It's just really expensive. It's so expensive that you're either ramping or reanimating. And ramping isn't beneficial because they're tapped, and reanimating it alone is not like incredible. Like just reanimate tracks it instead. So I don't really see a reason to play this card. Redshift, Rocketeer Chief, a 2-mana 2/3 legendary creature goblin pilot. It's got Vigilance. You can tap to add X mana of any one color where X is Redshift's power. Spend this mana only to activate abilities, such as exhaust abilities. Exhaust. This guy has Exhaust. You can pay 12 mana total, 10 red and a green to put any number of permanent cards from your hand on the battlefield. This is very expensive. All right, just ignore the last bit for a little bit. It's 2 mana 2/3 with Vigilance. Tap to make X mana of any one color. X only to activate abilities, though. There aren't that many abilities you want to activate. Yeah, that's tough. I mean, so in order to pull this off, let's say on turn 4 you have 4 lands. You would want this to have 8 power. Ideally, you go turn 2 Rocketeer, turn 3, somehow give it +6, so it's an 8/3. Turn 4, tap it for 8 mana, and use your other 4 lands to pay 12 total to put all your permanent cards from your hand on the battlefield. How do you get +6 on turn 3? +6. You need to Monstrous Rage, plus also whatever the other one is. Whatever the Manifest Dread one is. That could give you +6. Then you attack with Vigilance. So you hit them for 8, assuming they just sit there and do nothing. And then you tap it. No, but that doesn't persist to the next turn. You need a permanent +6 because you need the 4 mana the next turn. I don't know what we're doing with this card. I don't know. I don't know what we're supposed to do with this card. Riptide Gearhulk. 5 mana, 1 white, blue for a 2/5 artifact creature construct with double strike. It's got prowess, which is kind of weird for Azorius, right? It's not, is it? When this creature enters, for each opponent, put up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls into its library, third from the top. It's pretty weird. 5 mana is expensive. Double strike's okay. If it had lifelink, if it had double strike and lifelink, I'd be thrilled because then you could do something against mono red. Prowess is weird. It's already expensive. It's not like you have a lot of mana sitting around to play a bunch of cheap cantrips and prowess it up. This is a weird card. I don't think anyone's gonna play it. Sub Sunin, Luxa Embodied. I mean, No comments. She is a 5 mana 6/6 legendary creature god, mythic rare, reach, trample, and indestructible. Sab Sunin can't attack or block unless it has an even number of counters on it. 0 is even, so it comes in with 0 counters. So it can attack or block the turn it comes down. For 5 mana at the beginning of your first main phase. So again, turn 1, you play it. Doesn't have any counters. You've already passed the beginning of your first main phase, so it can attack. It can attack and block that first turn. At the beginning of your first main phase, put a +1 counter on it. Then, if it has an odd number of counters on it, draw 2 cards. Wait, this card's incredible. You slam it on 5. It has 0 counters. It can block that turn, and it's got indestructible. It cannot be destroyed. It just sits there. It has to get sunfalled or like binding away. It cannot be destroyed. It's got reach and trample too. Doesn't have haste yet, so whatever. Then the second turn comes around. At the beginning of your first main phase, you put a +1 counter on it. Now it's got odd counters. Then you just draw 2 cards. Okay, now we can't attack or block this turn, so we sit there sadly, but hopefully we draw 2 cards that can answer the thing we would want to block against. Then the next turn we put another +1 counter on it. Now it's an 8/8. Now it's an 8/8. We can attack with trample and indestructible. Wow. And then the next turn we draw 2 cards again. I think this card seems fantastic. As far as 5 drops go, Simic is weird because I guess just crab beans. Do you want to put this in your crab beans deck? You can play non-crab beans. You can play regular Simic. You could throw it in Teamer. Maybe it goes in the Teamer deck I was talking about with whatever that weird, the other weird Loot the Pathfinder. This card seems really good, unless I'm misunderstanding it. I think this card's very good. I will absolutely play it, unless I'm just completely missing something here. This card seems very good. 5 mana, 6/6. Can immediately block. Has indestructible. Next turn, draw 2 cards. Next turn, attack with trample and indestructible. Can't get it off the battlefield. An indestructible creature that draws you 2 cards every other turn. So net, you're drawing an extra card every turn. A 5 mana 6/6 indestructible creature with reach and trample that draws you an extra card every turn. Right, the Annex is like a 5 mana 6/6 with flying that draws you an extra card every turn. Wait, to put 9 mana into that. I think this card's good. I think this card is extremely good. I will have to find a Simic deck, or at least a deck that plays blue and green to put this in, unless I'm missing this. This card seems fantastic. Even for standard, a 5 mana, a 5 drop in standard that I think is very playable. Same, even like build around, like just ramp into this and let your thing sit here with indestructible. Even mono red will have issues with that. This card seems huge. This card seems format defining. I'm saying that out loud. That's like a pretty bold statement to say, but like, yeah, this card. And the only problem is it's expensive. Nobody thought anything of Sheldry when it came out at 4 mana. 5 mana is expensive. What 5 mana creatures are played in standard? Like none. Right? Dracosaur, as I explained, doesn't do anything. But this thing's indestructible, dude. She is indestructible. I'm down. I'm down. I think this card's extremely good. We'll see if I'm just dead wrong. Samet, the Driving Force. This is an example of a creature that sucks, because you play it and it gets removed immediately. 6 mana. 3 red, green, white. For a 4/5 legendary creature, human, warrior, cleric. She's got First Strike and Vigilance and Haste. She's got Start Your Engines. Other creatures you control get +X/+O, where X is your speed. Non-creature spells you cast cost X less to cast, where X is your speed. So yeah, the problem is it has no enter the battlefield effect. So you play it and she just dies immediately to like go for the throat or get lost or whatever. She doesn't die though. She's got Haste. So she's getting in there with Vigilance and First Strike and Haste for 4 damage. Other creatures also get +X/+O, so ideally you start your engine way earlier. I mean, 6 drop is so expensive. It's a creature. It's a 6 drop creature. You're not going to have any other creatures out. Again, you're reanimating your 6 drop or you're ramping into it. And if you ramp into it, then your creatures are tapped in order to pay for the ramp cost. Non-creatures, so it's good. It's not good the turn comes down. If it survives all the way to the next turn, then sure. All your other little dorks can get +4/+O and swing for the fence. That could be good. It doesn't have ward either. Like, I did make an elf deck, a Naya elf deck, that you can ramp right into. That deck was like surprisingly quite good. Was it red and green and I don't know what other color was. Voya Elves. Red and green and white. Like, this is a 5-mana 5/5 with Ward 3. That thing survives. When that attacks, you get +1 counters on each creature you control, or X number of elves you control. Like, that is what I feel like this card is trying to do. But this thing has Ward 3, so it actually sticks around. So, yeah, I don't know about this card. Where's the sucker? We're almost to the end. Where did he go? There he is. Here she is. Yeah, non-creature spells you cast cost S less to cast. Your spells could cost 4 less to cast, but that's crazy. It's just like not going to stick around that long. If it does, yes, that's pretty busted. But then like, this is already one of your 6 drops in your deck. How many other 6 drops and 5 drops are you running where you can actually take advantage of this? And it's in a weird color combination. It doesn't have blue, so you're not like drawing a bunch of cards. Weird card. It's going to die immediately. It's not going to be played in standard. Sita. Barmo, Masked Racer. 2 mana, a green and a blue for a 2/3 legendary creature, human rogue. It's got exhaust. You can pay X, green, green, and a blue. Put X +1 counters on Sita. Then you may have the base power and toughness of each other creature you control become equal to Sita's power until end of turn. Okay. So if you pay 3, all your 1/1s become, 2 1s or whatever. 2 2s. And if you pay 4, then all your 1/1s become 3 3s. You need a Simic token deck with this as like a weird finisher, but it could be just a random 2 mana 2/3 in the meantime. Oh, this is the other card in that artwork with Chandra. Sita. I don't know who Sita is lore wise. I don't know, man. I mean, there's no Simic deck today that's got a bunch of 1/1s lying around. It's all mono white tokens deck. You could throw this randomly into your mono white tokens deck and need green, green, blue to do this. I don't know who wants this. Winter, Cursed Rider. 2 mana 3/2. It's a blue and a black for a legendary creature, human warlock. It's got ward, pay 2 life. Artifacts you control also have ward, pay 2 life. If you exhaust it for 2 blue and a black and tap it, you can exile X artifact cards from your graveyard. Each other non-artifact creature gets -X until end of turn. This card's sweet. It's just weird to pull off. You got a 2 mana 3/2 that hits hard. It's got ward. That hits hard. All your artifacts have ward. That hits hard. And then if you exhaust it, it has a built-in sweeper. You can pay 4 mana and tap it. Exile X artifact cards from your graveyard. Each other non-artifact creature. Yeah, gets -X. So you'd need a bunch of random artifact cards in your graveyard at that point in the game. But if you ignore that line of text, a 2 mana 3/2 with ward 2 and like your artifacts go ward 2, that's like an okay card. The fact that it has this built-in sweeper on top is so weird. I don't know how you're going to get that many artifacts in your graveyard. Maybe you don't even need that many against mono red. If you get 2 artifacts into your graveyard and you can sweep on turn 4, you can pretty much sweep mono red's entire board. Maybe this card could be good. I don't really know. I just can't wrap my head around the artifacts that are going to be in the graveyard. Like, again, that implies that vehicles are good and you play them and you actually crew them and block and they die and like everything goes according to plan. They don't just sit there on your battlefield doing nothing because your opponent killed your creatures instead. Like, that's what I'm picturing. I don't know, man. What if we put it in my Azorius deck? Yeah, artifacts just don't end up in the graveyard. They just sit on the battlefield. I don't know how you're going to get them in the graveyard. That's the issue with this card. Otherwise, very random, very cool card. Zahur, Glory's Past. 2 mana 3/2 for a white and a black. Legendary creature, zombie cat warrior. It's got start your engines, which is good. Start your engines on a cheap card is good. Sack another creature for free. Surveil 1. Activate only once each turn. So you can sack a creature for free on your turn and on your opponent's turn. To Surveil 1. At max speed, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. This card's awesome. There's got to be a zombie deck that once this 2 mana 3/2 hits hard, it starts your engines if you care about that. If your opponent wants to target something else, you just sack it and Surveil once. Surveil 1, you can do that on your turn or their turn. And at max speed, every time you do that, or whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you just get a 2/2 zombie. Yeah, this card is sweet. It just depends how pushed zombies are. If there is a zombie deck that's okay, then this is a great addition to it. The Aether Spark. Oh my god. This card is sweet, dude. Wow. 4 mana, 4 loyalty. Legendary artifact, planeswalker equipment. My god, what a stat line. As long as the Aether Spark is attached to a creature, the Aether Spark can't be attacked and has whenever equipped creature deals combat damage during your turn, put that many loyalty counters on the Aether Spark. You can +1 to attach it up to one target creature, put a +1 counter on that creature. You can -5 to draw 2 cards. You can -10 to add 10 mana of any one color. I mean, obviously you're incentivized to put it on big creatures that deal lots of combat damage, so you get lots of loyalty. This is going in the new mono green / Gruul Dino deck. Turn 3, you drop your 3 mana 6/6 or your 3 mana 5/4 Dinosaur Lord. Turn 4, you drop this. You try to attach it. You're a sad boy if they kill it, but if they don't, you got a 7/7 that attacks, and then you have 11 loyalty on it, and then if they kill the creature, you still have this thing lying around. You can -10 and get 10 mana to hopefully play more dinosaurs, hopefully have like more stuff in your hand to play, or you can just -5 to draw 2 cards, which is also very good. Play the next dinosaur, and then it would still have like 6 loyalty left and be very hard to deal with. This card is absurd and kind of sweet, and I can't wait to try it out. Maybe this will be the first deck I play. Maybe this, let me know in the comments, should I play this plus dinosaurs, or the like in the artifact deck with this the Simulacrum thing that I think is gonna be very good as well. I think both of these are gonna be fun. Or it's Sab Sunin. I don't even know what to do with her yet. She's my favorite card so far I've seen. This card is insane. This card's epic. Like we gotta play with this card. We gotta put the Aether Spark on some big dinos. Like, how could you not? Lifecraft Engine, a 3 mana 4/4 artifact vehicle. As it enters, choose a creature type. Vehicle creatures you control are the chosen creature type in addition to their other types. Each creature you control of the chosen type, other than this vehicle, gets +1/+1, and this thing has creature 3. I don't know what this card does or means. If I give a vehicle a creature type, does that make it an artifact creature? Or is it still just a vehicle? Can you have a vehicle dinosaur that's not an artifact? That's not a creature vehicle dinosaur? I guess so. You're giving it a creature type. Can something have a creature type without being a creature? I don't know. If this automatically turned all your vehicles into creatures forever, that would be interesting to know, and then we could reevaluate the other vehicles of the set. I'm assuming it does not work that way, but I don't actually know. Yeah, otherwise it's a lord for like vehicles, I guess. I don't know what to make this card. Mark it back, Walker. XX for a 0/0 artifact creature construct. This creature enters with X +1/+1 counters on it. So if you pay 4 mana, it comes in as a 4 mana 2/2. Then you can pay 4 more mana to put an additional +1 counter on this creature. You can do that as many times as you want. When this creature dies, draw a card for each +1 counter on it. This is so expensive. This is so expensive. I don't know what you're doing with this card in Standard. I don't think you're playing this in Standard. This has got to be some weird combo deck. You have infinite mana, you draw infinite cards. That's what you're doing with this deck. It's an infinite combo card. It's not for Standard. Monument to... You know, if you could blink that other card I was talking about, there's the red card. If you could somehow blink that and use 4 mana to, I guess, sync into activated abilities, you could then put that 4 mana here to put a +1 counter on it. I don't know. I don't know how you get to infinite from that, though. Then you somehow need more mana to blink the thing. Nah, I don't know. Monument to Endurance, a 3 mana artifact. Whenever you discard a card, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Either draw a card or create a treasure token, or each opponent loses 3 life. Wow, I mean, this is really good with Liliana. You have to take an entire turn off to do it, but we take an entire turn off to annex. We just immediately get a payoff, though. But boy, if you have this and Liliana down, you plus every turn, you draw a card and they discard a card. That's pretty good. Or just create treasure, which is very good. Each opponent loses 3 life. This card is very powerful. It's just tough to take an entire turn off. But boy, if you run... So generally, if you want to take turns off, you want to run on sweepers. So like, you could run 4 Lilianas, you could run 4 Monument to Endurance, and then you need 4 4-drop sweepers. So you could run white for the Wrath of God there, or the 5 mana, Deadly Cover-Up thing. But if you can stack this with Liliana and discard a card every turn, if you can discard multiple cards a turn, I don't know how you really achieve that. I also don't know what happens if you discard 3 cards at once, like with the Tunnel Grinder. Does that count as 1 trigger or 3 triggers? I guess it would say discard 1 or more cards if that was the case. So if you tunnel grind and you discard 3 cards, you can draw an extra card and create a treasure, and each one will lose 3 life. I don't think you really have space for all that. That's too much do nothing. Is channeling discarding a card? Is the Carnosaur discarding a card, or is that different? Like, are there other things you can do here? What am I doing? Colors. I guess channel is discard, right? Where's that Carnosaur at? I don't even know if I have it in here. I do. Pay 3, discard it. Okay, so you could do things like run it with the Carnosaur. Do you want to put it in your reanimator package with like Bitter Triumph? Just card random stuff, just get some incremental value. It seems like so much effort to put in to discard a single card. I don't know if you want this or not. At its best, I think Liliana, the free discard every turn, seems great. But you have to discard cards out of your own hand. I think that's interesting. If you happen to get both, like, you're going to run away with the game. Drawing extra cards every turn, maybe you make treasure, maybe you discard some Carnosaurs in there, or like Bitter Triumph and stuff, and just get extra value. I don't know. It's a lot to ask. It's a lot to take off with an entire turn to do nothing. Radiant Lotus, 6 mana artifact, mythic rare. You can tap it to sack 1 or more artifacts. Choose a color. Target player adds 3 mana of the chosen color for each artifact sacrificed this way. So you can sacrifice like 5 artifacts by the time this thing comes down. And then add 15 mana of a single color. I don't know what you're doing with all that. Unless you can like midway ramp, like if you could get halfway with scoring emergence just to 6 and then play this and then have artifacts around to generate mana to get the rest of the way to omniscience, maybe, but I don't see a home for this in standard. What are you gonna do with all that mana? 6 is already expensive. 6 is already expensive to get to. I don't know what you want to do with the mana after 6. Cool, let me get all the Verge lands. Here's the rare land. So it is a land that immediately starts your engines. You can tap to make a colorless. Max speed, you make 2. That's really good, actually. Wow. That really incentivizes you to start your engines. Lands that make twice as much mana for free in your deck. That's really quite good. I mean, imagine this in mono black. Right, you run 4 of these. You start the engine on 1, or maybe 2, because again, you cut down a duress on 1. Then you get the bat down, or whatever. You start chipping away. You start getting the engine going. Then you drop the speed demon on 5. And once you get this to max speed 4, you have double the mana from each of these. You make 2 colors for each. Like, you go crazy with that. You can play all sorts of stuff. You're drawing all sorts of cards off the speed demon. I think this card is very good. You can probably only basically play it in monocolored decks for the most part. So maybe a mono red goblin deck, although I don't see it. I think mono black. Yeah. And maybe that forces out the Bloodletter of Alcazaz because you can't pay the 3 black to put it down. So maybe Sheldred makes it back in. Maybe you run 4 of these and 2 soul whatevers, and 4 Sheldred replaces the Bloodletter. If this card's that good, you eliminate the 1-turn kill combo of like the slash into the Bloodletter, but card seems very good. We got some Verges, which is awesome. I love that. Mana makes life easier. And that's it. That's it for rares and mythics. We'll quickly go through uncommons. There are like maybe 5 cards total I'll touch on. Maybe there are more I missed. I made a couple notes of things to go back and check. For blue, I saw, 1 affinity card? I didn't see anything in white I wanted to note. If there's stuff I missed, like I kind of skimmed through these pretty quickly. What was there is a single affinity. If you notice, yeah, this one, Memory Guardian. It's a 5 mana 3/4. All that stood out to me is that it has affinity for artifacts. So if we're looking for a way, like this could easily also go in the Azorius artifact deck, where this is just, I don't know, a 1 mana 3/4 flying. That also, I think it has base mana cost 5, right? So you would still get the trigger. It doesn't draw you a card or anything. Like there used to be affinity cards that are like 7 mana, but they draw you 2 cards when it enters. So you can play that for 1 and draw 2 cards. That was very good. This is just a random 1 mana 3/4 flyer, but I think it's worth calling out. In black, there's a card called Locust Spray, which if cut down didn't have to answer the slasher, then you could definitely play this card. Cycling for 1 black is very cheap, and the matchups for this card is useless. And -1/-1 kills a lot of the aggro things you want to kill. It's not perfect, but cut down's just better, because even in the mirror, you can still cut down your opponent's unstoppable slasher, which is really why you have to play cut down over disfigure or anything else. There was a time where I wasn't quite sure about that, but having played enough games of the mirror, you have to have cut down for that exact reason. In red, I said Fuel the Flames, a potential sweeper. I think it's a 3-mana sweeper, deal 2 damage to each creature, but you can also cycle it for 2. Again, cycling is a very good effect. And the matchups where it's not necessary, you can just cycle it away. And where it is, 2 damage to each creature is a lot of what you need to clear out early in the game. In gold, there are a couple random cards. There is Broadside Barrage. 3-mana instant, 5 damage target creature or planeswalker. Draw a card, discard a card. It's like pretty good removal, I think. It doesn't kill 6/6 demons, but I thought it was an okay card to note. Cloudspire Coordinator. 2-mana 3/1. When this creature enters... I feel like I missed some gold cards. I feel like there was a gold pilot I missed somehow. 2-mana 3/1. When this creature enters Scry 2, you can tap it to create X 1/1 colorless pilot creature tokens, where X is the number of mounts or vehicles that enter the battlefield under your control this turn. Those tokens have... This token saddles mounts and vehicles, power 2 or greater. Yeah, so this is a card you kind of have to play to fix the pilot problem. It's kind of like building a deck with creatures and enchantments. If you have all enchantments, you're useless. If you have all creatures, you're not doing the thing. Like, you need pilots and artifacts, which is why these decks are difficult to build. This does the most of any card I've seen so far to facilitate that. Like, you turn 3, you play a artifact vehicle, then you tap this thing and create a pilot, and then next turn you have a pilot to go with it. So that's like great. It does the thing you want it to do. If you're going to build artifact deck, you probably need 4 of these. And I swear there was a a rare or mythic rare, also red and white pilot. Is it possible I missed it, or did I already talk about it and I've spaced out because I've been talking for like 4 hours straight? Where is that sucker? I don't know if I talked about this or not. It's a red and a white for a 2/3 Colodon Triumph Caster legendary creature, human pilot, mounts and vehicles you control have haste. That's great. Whenever a mount you control enters, it becomes saddled until end of turn. And whenever a vehicle you control enters, it becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. This is fantastic. Every subsequent creature is automatically mounted or saddled and has haste. So like Boros is the premier color to run vehicles, I think. You got this card, you got the other 2-drop, and then you got some 3-drops that all come in with haste, and they pop out pilots for the next turn. Like, this is the thing you want. I know, I guess I think I missed that card. I don't know what we're talking about it. What else we got? The Sky Serpent Seeker was like a random Simic flying Death Touch creature. 2-mana 1/1. You can exhaust. For 4 mana, you can reveal from the top of your library until you reveal 2 land cards. Put those land cards onto the battlefield tapped and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I thought that was kind of cool. Maybe it's not worth calling out. Voyage Home is the last card here in uncommons. Oh, another affinity card. It's 7 mana, 5 and a white and a blue for a sorcery speed. Affinity for artifacts. You can draw 3 cards and gain 3 life. Oh yeah, this card's fantastic. Like, you got to throw this in my Azorius deck, right? You get this down to a single 2 mana, draw 3 cards and gain 3 life. I don't know how many you want, but this card's fantastic. This card's definitely going to make that deck for sure. That's a really powerful draw spell. Maybe you cut some of the braided nets for this sucker. I don't know how many you want, but draw 3, 2 mana, draw 3 and gain 3 life is very good. That's like that deck. I think that deck's going to be solid. I think that deck really is going to be solid. Last thing, there are just 2 single cards in black I wanted to note. In terms of commons and uncommons, you largely want to be looking for 1s and 2-drops, like random 1 or 2 drops that are actually pretty good, like the Heartfire Hero. Cheap black removal spells, cheap red removal spells, and maybe a reanimator spell, but it's very unlikely that really any creatures above 2 mana value get played in ranked standard from commons and uncommons. The Gravestalker gets costs 1 less to cast for each artifact and or creature in your graveyard. And it can also be cycled away. This could very easily be a 1 mana 5/4. Right? You could run this in, I don't know, your Sultai Reanimator deck. I don't know if I guess you don't really have space for that, but this could be extremely cheap if you can get something in your graveyard. Probably won't make standard, but I just want to call it out. And the Grim Bauble is the last card I wanted to call out. It's a 1 mana artifact. When it enters, target creature an opponent controls gets -2 until end of turn. Just wanted to call that out. If you needed a critical mass of artifacts to achieve something, this is an artifact that serves as decent removal and a body later that you could sack or manipulate in some manner or fashion. Whew. That is the whole thing. I do not know how long this video was. I hope you guys are excited for Aetherdrift. I think there are some cool cards coming. Like I said at the beginning, February 5th, Wednesday, I'll be doing the early access event. So make sure you hit the subscribe button and then click the bell note, the icon for either personalized or for all stuff. You don't want to miss any of those videos. They're going to be hot. I think we're done here. As always, like and subscribe, leave comments, especially if I missed anything or like made any egregious errors. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next one.